Boom, boom, boom. They pounded on the barrier, but it didn't move at all. Yeon-woo could barely even hear the sounds they were making. Hades quietly freed himself from Yeon-woo's arms. He took faltering steps, unable to find his balance. Yeon-woo tried to help him, but Hades put up a hand to stop him before he straightened up. At that moment, it looked like the king of the underworld had returned. It was hard to tell what made him change his mind after he'd already tried to give everything up, but one thing was clear, he was attempting to do something important. My divinity has already scattered, and I will no longer recover. Then, Yeon-woo tried to say something, but Hades cut him off. But if I have a clear successor and announce it properly, the pandemonium will be dealt with. Cashing. Hades pulled out his sword from its sheath. It was impossible to progress with the bonus because Alforoni had blocked the system. There was only one option left, he had to pass down not only the bonus, but also all the power he had in order to force Yeon-woo's divinity to increase. Not a single scheming god or demon would be able to stop him. Nor would Alforoni, since there had never been a situation in the past when a transcendent gave everything of his to a mortal. However, to Hades, he was only returning everything he'd received from him. He had no regrets about it. And in the future, after Yeon-woo exoviated and gained transcendence when he properly realized holiness, Pluto would flourish again. The transfer of the throne will now begin. The successor number must kneel and bow to the king to pay his respects. Chapter 389. Gigantomachia, 14. Hades. Quick! Hades hurried Yeon-woo as if there wasn't much time left. Yeon-woo bit his lip. Of course, he knew that Hades was trying to pass down everything he had before he closed his eyes forever: his throne, power, holiness, divinity, legends, and everything else he'd accumulated. Yeon-woo had rescued Hades hoping he would regain the will to live and take care of the mess in Tartarus, but Hades was sure that he no longer had a role to play. I'm already a part of the old generation. Just as the Black King faded away and Mother Earth stepped back, it's time for me to give up my position to you and retreat into history. Besides, who would follow me, the cause of all this mess, even if I raised my sword again? Hades smiled faintly at the grim-looking Yeon-woo. It was a smile that had none of his usual cynicism or scorn, and Yeon-woo had never seen it on Hades' face before. However, it suited Hades, as though revealing that he wasn't only the cold king of the underworld Yeon-woo had seen. Did he once smile like this in the past? If a new successor were to appear, it would be like a spark for the resurrection of Pluto. Hades wanted Yeon-woo to use him since he was a setting sun anyway. If he continued to rule Pluto, they would face nothing but loss. However, if he fought the enemies on the front lines, and his successor led Pluto after his death, it would be a completely different situation. They would be able to reorganize under their new leader, and their will to fight would rise as they mourned their dead king. Hades wanted to leave the future of Pluto and the underworld in Yeon-woo's hands, believing that their continuation was only possible with Yeon-woo. Although it's a bit late, I still want my subordinates to remember me as a good king in the end. Can you help me? Yeon-woo couldn't answer and clenched his teeth. His head spun as he tried to come up with other things they could do to save Hades. Jeong-woo anxiously said. Boom! Boom! The barrier shook violently, and the color of the shadows intensified. The giants pounded more violently to break the barrier, and it was in danger of collapsing. Hurry! Yeon-woo had no choice but to kneel when he saw the urgency in Hades' eyes. Yes, Your Majesty. He slowly lowered his head and took off his mask. Hades nodded with a solemn face as he tapped Yeon-woo's head and shoulders with his sword. Will the successor number swear to the heavens and the gods to be diligent in all the tasks and responsibilities given as the new king of the underworld? I swear. Is the successor number confident in his ability to preserve the history and traditions of the underworld as the new king of the underworld? I'm confident. Good. With this, I hereby announce that number is now the new king of the underworld. Hades has given his blessing. Hades has given his grace. The incomplete succession process has been completed with Hades' authorization. Congratulations! You have achieved the domain of the King of the Underworld. You have gained the title King of the Underworld. You have gained the title Owner of Cunning. You have gained the title Higher God of Olympus. All stats have increased by 30. You have gained a piece of holiness. You have gained a clue about transcendence. You have made an achievement that is not easily accomplished. Additional karma will be provided. You have acquired 100,000 karma. You have acquired 200,000 additional karma. The enthronement of the new king of the underworld has been formally announced to all residents of the tower. Will you reveal your name? You have refused to reveal your face. Nothing has been disclosed about your identity. All residents of the tower are now aware of the new king of the underworld. All praise or criticism of your great achievements will be directed to the new king of the underworld. You have succeeded in acquiring the domain as a mortal, but you still lack many qualifications to assimilate it. The domain is being adjusted to match your current level. The Power Underworld Domain Declaration has been temporarily sealed. The Power Eyes Within Darkness has been temporarily sealed. Gain the qualifications to be worthy of your domain. When your level increases, your sealed powers and holy power will be unlocked. Your current situation is pro tempore king of the underworld. Your throne is coveted by many gods and demons. Many rivals will attempt to usurp your position. Be victorious in battle and continue to grow while protecting your throne. The more unshakable your throne, the greater the legends you will create. You will have an indomitable reputation. All gods of death nod at your achievement. All demons of death smile viciously at your new position. The left wing, death, of Sky Wings has been strengthened. A few gods believe that you are not fit for your position. Many demons lick their lips. Rib. Clack. Clack. Yeon-woo felt something deep within his body expanding. His soul was growing. The bonds around his soul were stretching and snapping off. He felt a sudden sense of freedom. The unfamiliar energy that came creeping out of his soul was absorbed into his body and mixed with his magic power. The dark element has been added to the nature of your magic power. After taking in holy fire, his magic power had been composed of the fire element. The drastic changes he was experiencing were proof of the power of the king of the underworld. The thick scent of darkness swelled before his nose. Ding! The Sudden Quest Exodus has been created. Sudden Quest/Exodus. Description: Tartarus is currently facing a danger that it has never encountered before. The imprisoned titans and giants under Gaia's protection have risen up, and all the gods from Olympus who descended to support Tartarus are in danger of losing the stairs to Olympus. A gigantomachia, which was once only heard of in legends, has erupted once more. You have been crowned as the king of the underworld in the middle of this turbulent era, and your position has already been announced to the residents of the tower. The soldiers of the underworld are looking at you in hopes that you'll rectify the situation quickly. Your duty is to grant their wishes. Escape safely from the battlefield of the gods, Tartarus, and from the threat of the titans and giants. Find a new location where you can regroup. Time limit. Condition for participation: King of the Underworld. Conditions for success: 1. Gain the trust of Dis Pluto as their new king. 2. Lead Dis Pluto to safety away from the titans, giants, and Tartarus. 3. Escape from danger and create a base camp in a safe zone. Rewards: 1. Power Underworld Domain Declaration. 2. Summoning of Dis Pluto. 3. Qualification to reconstruct Tartarus. 4. New piece of holiness and clue to transcendence. The sudden quest was Hades' final request, and the duty he had to fulfill as king. It'll be quite difficult, but I entrust it all to you. Hades patted Yeon-woo's shoulder with a smile. Yeon-woo looked at him grimly and nodded before putting his mask back on. Spreading his fire wings open, he quickly rose and left. He knew he wouldn't see Hades again, but he didn't say goodbye. He could only do one thing, respect Hades' final decision as the former king of the underworld. As he watched Yeon-woo leave, Hades thought to himself, how funny. My days were filled with despair for hundreds of years as someone who ran away from his duties, but I changed after just a few words. Have I always been this fickle? However, he knew what he wasn't. It was only that Yeon-woo's words had struck a chord. Yeon-woo had reminded him of his duty to protect those who believed and followed him. It wasn't the power of a king or his position as an Olympian that moved Hades but the faith of his followers. He didn't want to just fade out into insignificance and linger in Yeon-woo's memories as an incompetent king. Boom! Crash! Just then, the invisible barrier finally collapsed and black shadows flooded in. Giants ran towards him baring their teeth, believing that they could easily defeat him now that they had taken his holy power. You've become a laughingstock, Hades, to be looked down on by such deplorable scum. Rumble. Hades swung his sword with a smirk. Black bolts fell from the sky, blowing the giant Hippolytus away and turning him into a bloody clump. How could Hades still be so powerful? The remaining giants and their subordinates were stunned. Hades smiled widely. You despicable idiots couldn't even lift your heads in my presence, and now you dare block the path of a king. The fierce aura he exuded with the last of his energy made it evident why he was the king of the underworld and the eldest of the gods of Olympus. No one will pass me. Bisha, you. Sorry, General. Lam gritted her teeth as she looked at the blade that pierced through her chest. Her blue-haired subordinate looked at her sadly. Although Bisha had a playful nature, he was more serious than anyone else in battle and always took care of his comrades. She never imagined he would betray her like this. When she realized the energy around him was similar to Typhon's, she finally understood that the hand of the Titans and Giants hadn't just reached into Olympus but Pluto as well. I couldn't see any other path. She also understood the weak excuse that Bisha offered. He was probably at a loss and frustrated by the fact that they'd been losing holy territories day by day. In a dark situation without any hope for the future, it would have been difficult to refuse Typhon's offer. She couldn't even begin to guess how many soldiers had made the same choice. If she'd known this would happen, she should have taken better care of her subordinates instead of giving her all to fighting. But with the blade in her chest, it was too late. You don't need to feel sorry. Even so, there was a line one shouldn't cross. Because I'll do the same to you. Bisha was swept away from the impact even before he realized he was being attacked. He likely hadn't expected that Lam could muster this much strength after being so severely injured. Gasp! Gasp! Lam breathed out roughly and looked around the chaotic battlefield. On the ground, Pluto and the enemy's subordinates were engaged in violent combat, and in the sky, the battle between the gods of Olympus and the Titans and Giants was still ongoing. Lightning struck, wind blew, fires burned, darkness shrouded everything. It was a battle that mortals or even lesser divine beings couldn't even imagine in its bloodiness and fury. Pluto, who was already at a disadvantage because of their small number, crumbled when the traitors revealed themselves. The red sky suddenly opened as Typhon's eyes revealed themselves. The battle that had seemed evenly matched was suddenly flipped over. Typhon struck the gods with divine punishment, sweeping many of them away with a sudden flash. Dike, Themis, Pothos, Iceless, and many more disappeared before they could react. There were many others that didn't reappear. The columns of light that connected Olympus and Tartarus were slowly turning black. As soon as they become columns of darkness, the Titans' and Giants' invasion of the heavenly world would succeed. They were already on the brink of victory, and Typhon was already taking possession of Tartarus. Olympus, is in our hands? Athena and Hermes moved frantically. Despite their mutual hostility, Poseidon fought with them, creating wild storms. We have to stop them from reaching the columns, no matter what. Damn it! Hades! What are you doing? The gods of Olympus tried to protect the columns of light from the Titans and Giants. However, as the columns grew darker, the titans and giants began to regain their lost divinity. The constraints that had been placed on them after being sealed in Tartarus were slowly fading away. Gaia's influence grew more powerful. Now, the sky will open. Mother! Great Mother! Watch your children! Typhon burst out laughing. The invasion of Olympus seemed imminent. Lam couldn't let herself collapse as she watched. She should have already died from her injury, but her rage and resentment kept life burning inside her body. She couldn't allow herself to fall, she had to protect Pluto somehow. But how? Now that her channel with Hades had been disconnected, she had lost all her powers and holy power. The only thing left to her was her physical strength, but it wasn't enough to help her turn the tide. Pluto was dying, and soon, they would be totally annihilated. And so, Lam forced herself to walk, hoping that she could protect even just one subordinate and comrade. However, she found no miracles, and the world spun around her as she collapsed. When she came to, she was already on the ground, barely able to lift her upper body up. She tried to support herself with her spear, but her head was too heavy. Was this really the end? Would all her past efforts go up in smoke? Those days she'd spent laughing and crying with her comrades would end in nothing. Had it all been in vain? Lord Hades, please! Just as she was about to fall into a deep sleep, unable to stop her eyes from closing, the miracle she hoped for appeared. Dreams, fade away? She dimly heard a voice, and in her blurry vision, black-red flames split apart like wings. It was the image that had always brought victory to them, and so she could finally close her eyes with a smile. He's here. At last. Chapter 390. Gigantomachia, 15. The battlefield that met Yeon-woo's eyes was pure bedlam. Gods were entangled with each other, and the soldiers clashing with the subordinates made him catch his breath. When he saw the black stains growing on the columns of light, he realized that Viera had pulled off her scheme successfully. At the moment, nothing could stop her. Although he received the throne from Hades, he still hadn't exoviated and transcended. Without divinity, there were limits to his strength and how much he could help Olympus. Since Hades knew this, as well, his quest for Yeon-woo was focused on escape. He wanted Yeon-woo to regroup the soldiers and reclaim Tartarus later when everything was settled, which was why Yeon-woo tried to do everything within his capacity. Time difference. As time slowed, he observed the progress of the war while checking to see what he could do to help. First, he looked for his comrades. Kreutz. We're holding our position for now, but we won't last much longer. We'll have to retreat soon. Shit. Where are these damned things coming from? Please, hold on just a little longer. Hurry. We're reaching our breaking point. Kreutz was reciting a prayer, his holy sword Zulfikar planted in the ground. The stone at the center of the holy sword turned to topaz, created a huge barrier around them. Thud. The monsters threw their bodies at the barrier as Galliard shot out arrows one after the other to stop them from approaching. He also sent them towards the monsters with higher statuses to thin out their ranks. Among them, Khan was the busiest. He wove in and out of the barrier using Bien. Lightning battered down, and whirlwinds blew, monsters dying with each strike, their blood strengthening the blood sword at the same time. Khan was covered in the blood and gore of his enemies, and he emanated a bleak ghostly energy. However, his appearance was like a light at the end of a dark tunnel for his allies. Now that the chain of command was broken, Pluto had splintered into islands of soldiers buffeted by the raging waves of the subordinates. They could barely fend the monsters off and were in danger of being overwhelmed at any time. However, Khan appeared at the most endangered locations. Khan. This isn't the time. Follow me. Hurry. He secured an escape route through the monsters and led them to Kreutz's barrier. As he gathered the Pluto members one by one, they began to look more like an organized troop, and holding their shields and spears out, they began to push back the monsters. Just as Yeon-woo had ordered, they focused on gathering the Dis-Pluto members in one place. However, there was a disadvantage to this because the bigger the group grew, the more they would catch their enemy's attention. Lam is dead. The first, third, and fourth corps have been decimated. We've lost contact with the 10th Corps. They were at the location of Hyperion's descent. I told them so many times not to go. Shit. Cryas is coming this way. The right section of the barrier is about to crack. Support it. The reports came in about Lam, who had been their psychological pillar, and the situation of the other corps. Most of them had been trying to protect the columns of light only to be defeated by the Titans. Kreuz's barrier also had its limits. No matter how much he expanded it, it could only hold a certain capacity, and its durability was decreasing as the monsters battered it. The color of Zulfikar's stone grew fainter, and it seemed to be on the brink of cracking. It was a dangerous situation, and no one knew how long they could endure. The longer the fight continued, the harder Galliard and Khan worked to save just even one more person. After fighting with Dis-Pluto for the past few months, they had become their precious comrades, and there were still too many of them in dangerous positions. The gravest danger that they were facing came from the Titan Cryas, who was rampaging towards them. He was one of the 12 Titan gods leading the charge, and rage burned in his eyes as he prepared to finally return the humiliation they received at Buwangji. I will crush each one of you. The monsters around Cryas multiplied as he grew close, and so many surrounded the barrier that it was impossible to see through them. Just as Cryas' gigantic shadow fell over Khan's head, Yeon-woo released time difference and appeared. Crash! Sky wings, death! His left wing expanded and shot up so high that it seemed to pierce the sky. As he added more firepower, the wing turned black and split into 3 layers. At that moment, death descended. The monsters surrounding the barrier toppled like dominoes before they even realized what was happening. Their corpses looked nothing like the growling beasts they'd been when they were alive. Kane. Kreuz's eyes widened when he realized it was Yeon-woo. Kane. Kane is here. Kane is here. We can win. The color returned to the faces of Dis-Pluto's members when they saw Yeon-woo. He represented victory to them, and his arrival at a moment where they felt hopeless and at the end of their rope made their will to fight burst out once more. Yeon-woo grinned at Dis-Pluto and turned back to Cryas, who stood as tall as a mountain. Gra! This, what is this? Formless powers crept up Cryas' legs like a spreading disease, making it impossible for him to approach. You, how are you here? The Wing of Death had the significance of the powers of 666 different deaths. Just as the Titan Toei had struggled against the fear of death descending on him, Cryas could feel the 666 gods and demons reaching out to grasp his neck. Yeon-woo's powers of death had been strengthened with the 4th step awakening. However, Cryas didn't go down as easily as Toei. He kicked and struggled, withstanding the gods and demons of death like a true leader of the Titans. This was only possible because more of his divinity had returned with the darkened columns of light. Roar! Cryas made another thunderous bellow that practically shook the earth. However, Yeon-woo was satisfied. He only needed time, and with all the magic power he could muster, he released open speaking. Everyone, run! There was no need for him to give directions because only one path was open all the way to Myeongbujin, where Yeon-woo first cooperated with Dis-Pluto successfully. There was another column of light there. Where do you think you're going? Cryas stretched his hand when he saw Yeon-woo and the others escaping. The 666 powers were still eating away at his body. It was dangerous to disregard them, but stopping Dis-Pluto was more important. The Dis-Pluto bastards were nuisances that had bothered them during the time of their imprisonment, and if he didn't get rid of them once and for all now, there was no way to predict what they would do in the future. He had to nip the threat in the bud. Yeon-woo attempted to stand against Cryas, gripping the grid in one hand. Even if he could keep it open longer because of the 4th step awakening, the Death Wing wouldn't last too long. He had to furl his wing to buy some time. At that moment, something powerful crashed into Cryas' neck. Boom! Cryas lost his balance and fell to the ground, his throat halfway through. Black smoke spurted out. Gra! How dare you! Cryas thundered in fury. However, a flame shot up from his chest and soon spread to the rest of his body. How dare I? Dare! Athena growled as she glared at Cryas. She had seemed so sad and frail in front of Yeon-woo, but at this moment, he could see why she was the goddess of war, her eyes flashing intensely under her helm. Those should be my words. You fools dared to harm my children in front of me? You degenerates! Swish! Space opened, and 9 petaled shields rushed out one after the other, her holy artifact, Aegis. It was like watching flowers fall to the ground. Athena held one of the Aegis in her left hand and raised a massive lance in her right as she leaped up like a ray of light splitting through air. Ping! She landed on Cryas' forehead. Gra! She crushed his skull, and a large storm of fire blazed over his body. The crack on his forehead spread to his arms, and black smoke leaked out. Hermes appeared as though to assist her, tapping Caduceus on the ground lightly. However, those easy movements caused a great tremor to shake through the earth. Mounds of dirt tossed over as 6 mammoth boa constrictors rushed out towards Cryas. The largest of them wrapped around Cryas' body like rope, and the others tore at his limbs. One of Cryas' arms was thrown in the air as black smoke poured out like a fountain, obscuring the ground. The boa constrictors ate through Cryas' body, filling their stomachs. Gra! As Cryas floundered in pain, Hermes smiled and signaled at Yeon-woo to leave, his eyes full of affection. Yeon-woo felt apologetic and grateful at their help. He bowed and turned in the opposite direction. His right wing unfolded. Sky wings, fight! Red flames that seemed to burn the sky spurted from the blackened embers. Black Gubitera, philosopher's eyes. Draconic divine eyes. Fiery golden eyes. As his eyes grew tinted with gold, he saw Titans and their subordinates arriving to stop the escaping Dis-Pluto members. His philosopher's stone whirled, overheating. With time difference, he quickly chose his target and made a powerful swing with Vigrid. The hidden true name of Vigrid, Durandal, is released. Folklore, gust of wind. The winds condensed inside Vigrid and released a tornado that swept away countless enemies with the strength of heaven and holy fire. Yeon-woo was now stronger than when he first arrived in Tartarus. Boom! 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 Rumble! Smash! Yeon-woo rolled out his fire wings and stepped on wind path, blasting everything away to clear a path for Dis-Pluto. The exodus had begun. Chapter 391. Gigantomachia, 16. Ha ha ha. Die? There's too many? Sure, but where else will you find a place like this? Shannon and Han Ryeong dashed around, brandishing their swords. Yeon-woo wasn't the only one who'd become stronger on the battlefields of Tartarus, so had they. Since it was the territory of the underworld, there wasn't a better location for Shannon and Han Ryeong to regain their abilities. What was more, they managed to collect souls that were of finer quality than the ones from the floors of the tower. They could feel their levels increasing every day. From some time, Shannon had been forging a path to a new peak that he hadn't experienced when he was still alive. It was a mystery to him. He was close to overcoming the wall that blocked his way to becoming a ranker, and each day felt new to him. More than once, he wondered whether he was only having a final hallucination before death. However, he really was here, and this overflowing strength belonged to him. Shannon wasn't satisfied with that and put in more effort to truly master his skills so he could catch up with Yeon-woo, who continued advancing rapidly. He'd been quiet recently because he was busy analyzing Heaven Bracket from different angles. He focused on 2 areas as he trained, Shinmo Kryeong and Flame Wheel. The One-Horned tribe referred to Shinmo Kryeong as Shinbup, the way of moving of body. Just as a pine tree didn't lose its green leaves even in a tough environment and bamboo bent instead of breaking, Shinmo Kryong was perfect for Shannon, who had walked the path of the sword all his life. The symbol of Shinmo Kryong was mok, or tree, and it enhanced flame wheel, which he used to strengthen his skill volcano. After all, fire burned fiercer with wood as its fuel. Now, the results of his cultivation were apparent. The flames that burst out with every stroke of his sword swept away monsters, their souls then becoming nourishment that added to his power. Our master said something about this. What was it again? Oh, right. That? Shannon burst out laughing. He was having so much fun that he almost seemed crazy. This is speed leveling, huh? Han Ryong was feeling the same exhilaration. You have absorbed souls. A part of your sealed level has been released. You have absorbed souls. A part of your sealed level has been released. You have absorbed an immeasurable amount of souls. Along with the acquisition of great knowledge, your sealed level has been completely released. Continue your achievements from your previous life as Han Ryong. All the paths you walk will increase the Saber God's accomplishments. Whoosh! A bright light wrapped around Han Ryong. It wasn't easy to see what was going on because of the explosions on the battlefield, but he was experiencing a profound change. He felt as though he were being freed from chains, and when he realized that his level was being released, he smiled widely for the first time in a long while. Finally! Finally! It was the moment he'd been waiting for, regaining his power as the Saber God and recovering his past. Han Ryong didn't brush over the moment and savored it to the fullest. He pulled his 9 swords out, swung them around as he danced, practicing moves with them. His movements were smoother and sharper than when he'd been alive. Like Shannon, it was a change gained from studying Heaven Bracket. The areas he'd been interested in were flowing water and Jeong-woo. Flowing water was a type of footwork. Because he used 9 swords planted in the ground, footwork took priority over all else for him, and flowing water was the most ideal method to develop it. Rivers that curved over mountains were smooth but sometimes caused floods. When they flowed into the ocean, they created hurricanes and storms that swallowed the world. It was the flawless adjustment of intensity. Jeong-woo had the edge and sturdiness of steel, so Han Ryong's blade became equally strong. Crash! Rumble! As they followed the path that the 2 death nobles opened, the spirit Gui stretched out their shadows and took in the souls. The fog of the ghosts screeched more loudly above them. The darkness nemesis propagated bound their enemies, and Nike hid in the fire, scorching the ground, devouring everything in its vicinity like hellfire. All, death, to Master! At Bu's command, a new wave of death crashed into a land already rampant with death. Kikikik. Kaie. The exodus of Pluto drew the attention of different parties for different reasons. The isolated members went to great lengths to jump over hurdles and run towards Yeon-woo. The cheers for Yeon-woo grew louder, and the group began to grow bigger even as more attempts to thwart them arrived. Black King. I apologize, but you cannot leave. Typhon's eyes in the sky focused on Yeon-woo and a bolt of lightning thundered his way. Yeon-woo instinctively raised Vigrid, but he abruptly stopped even as he was unfurling fire wings. There was something abnormal about the power of the lightning. Careful! At Yeon-woo's shout, the Pluto members stopped running and went into defensive postures. Shannon and Han Ryong, who had been destroying the monsters in their path, looked ahead with grim faces. Everyone was tense. Sweat gathered in the hand that held Vigrid as pieces of the Ruyi Bang floated around Yeon-woo, waiting for his command. Where the lightning struck, the thick dust settled down and a man appeared with heavy bangs that covered his eyes. Although he didn't exude any exceptional energy, Yeon-woo felt his heart contract. He couldn't see any imperfections through his draconic divine eyes. The man was a flawless, outstanding being. When the hair covering the man's eyes shifted and revealed his eyes, Yeon-woo immediately realized who he was. Typhon. Everyone grew even more uneasy at those words. No one expected that the king of the giants who was busy dealing with the gods of Olympus would appear. Successor to the Black King, I apologize, but your cute tricks must come to an end. Typhon brushed his hair back with a cold smile. We need you. Kashing. Clang. Shannon and Hanryong raised their swords to protect Yeon-woo. Our master is pretty charming, but... Haha. I think he's been quite particular with men these days, am I right? Do you feel the need to joke right now? Brahm, Khan, Galliard, and Kreutz all tightened their grip on their weapons. The Dis-Pluto members looked serious and ready to move against the leader of their enemies who had put them in their current predicament. They were also filled with determination to guard their new king. However, Typhon just smirked as if he found them amusing and took a step forward. Strong winds whirled around them, making it difficult for people to remain standing. Yeon-woo gritted his teeth and formed the Ruyi Bang pieces into a spear, connecting the grid on one end. Clack! In fact, he'd been expecting Typhon's arrival. The Black King was an outstanding being who made an apostle out of the King of Titans, Cronus. Although Yeon-woo wasn't sure, he suspected that the Black King was a conceptual god who had existed from the beginning of time and was at least as powerful as Gaia. Because Typhon said he was Cronus' successor and possessed his power, there was no way he would want to let the new successor to the Black King, Yeon-woo, leave. He probably hoped to force Yeon-woo to be his subordinate or do all kinds of experiments on him. Is there a way out of this? Yeon-woo racked his brain as he looked at Typhon standing in front of him. Many calculations went through his head with time difference, but... Crash! What are you trying to see? You have no viable options. Typhon followed the speed of Yeon-woo's thoughts and easily destroyed his skills so Yeon-woo couldn't try anything. Yeon-woo stepped back, vomiting blood. His hold on the Ruyi Bang tightened. He would have liked to properly display the power of the throne that Hades had passed down, but his level wouldn't allow him this benefit yet. Were they at a dead end? This was the only thought running through his mind. Just as he rolled out the wing of death and the wing of fight, thinking that he would at least go down with a fight, something powerful shot down in front of him. Hoop-de-doo. Hoop. Boom. For a moment, Yeon-woo thought a giant that arrived to help Typhon, but the arrival's hostility was directed at Typhon instead. He was over 2 meters tall, with massive muscles and a fierce expression that reminded Yeon-woo of Fanti. Most importantly, Yeon-woo could feel one of the channels around him grow clearer. Ares grins at you. Ares hopes you give some of your attention to him. The man smiled crookedly as he glanced at Yeon-woo before roaring at Typhon, thrusting Typhon's aura away as though it had never been there. Typhon's expression hardened. What is this child's play, Ares? Ares was Zeus' son and one of the 12 Olympians. Like Athena, he was also a war god. He laughed boisterously. Ha ha ha. This is just a little something to appeal to my apostle. I was thinking I ought to make an awesome appearance since I'm a god, no. Apostle? Everyone's gazes turned to Yeon-woo at Ares' ridiculous words. They seemed to be asking when he'd become Ares' apostle. However, it was Yeon-woo's first time hearing about it as well, so he just narrowed his eyes at Ares, wondering what he was talking about. For a moment, he thought Ares was planning something, but it didn't appear that way. Typhon frowned. Apostle? Are you saying the successor to the Black King is your apostle? Nope. But he will be soon. Ares pounded his fists together with a smirk. I'm planning on showing him a bunch of cool stuff to entice him. Here's a stunning war god with a broad back protecting him and his friends from danger. Damn! Doesn't that sound cool? Any man would fall in love, why wouldn't he, too? Agar's snorts, asking what kind of bullshit Ares is talking. Also, I'm the god of fighting and war, which means I'm a guardian of the path our pretty little apostle here wants to walk on. Agar's is shocked. Agar's looks at you as though he just remembered your goal. And we're both part of Olympus, so I can help him as a sunbee. Ha ha ha. So Typhon, you should clear a path for my apostle here. Agars is anxious. A message from Agars has arrived. Message, what about me? Accept me. I'm a greater being than that idiot. I can help you guys. A message from Agars has arrived. Message, quick. Hurry before Agar's messages have temporarily been blocked with the user's authorization. Yeon-woo sighed as he blocked Agar's panicked messages. He was grateful help had arrived, but the help seemed a bit weird. From what he knew, Ares was famous for his arrogant attitude, and he was considered a troublemaker in Olympus. Yeon-woo felt like laughing because a guy like that was acting so passionately just to have him as an apostle. He could guess why. Ares had been quite interested in him for a while, but with his sister Athena protecting Yeon-woo, he could only twiddle his thumbs and watch. Now that she was busy with Cryas, he had a chance to make a strong impression, just as he said. He was a simple character who thought that he could convince Yeon-woo this way, and it suited his personality perfectly. However, Yeon-woo was becoming exasperated at how hysterical the situation was making Agars. Many gods cringe at Agars and Ares. Many demons shake their heads at Agars and Ares. However, since Ares was one of the strongest in Olympus when it came to battle skills, with his help, Yeon-woo would easily avoid Typhon. You imbecile, you want to fight me on your own? Me, someone even Hades couldn't defeat. Typhon released his level, dissatisfied at Ares' confidence. Rumble. Dark clouds filled the skies and thunder began to boom, ready to a holy punishment. But Ares clenched his fists and smiled ferociously, like a lion ready to attack a huge elephant. What makes you think I'm alone? What? Typhon frowned. At that moment, he suddenly realized something that had been hidden from him was now appearing. Far away beyond the grass, a beautiful man with golden hair was raising a bow in his direction. It was the god of the sun, Apollo. Next to him was Artemis, descending to the ground with her twin swords raised and legendary beasts by her side. A pleasant scent began to waft around them. It was Dionysus' toast, a buff famous even in Tartarus. It increased the speed of recovery of holy power and could even resurrect people. The second-generation gods were targeting Typhon together. I see. It's a trap. Typhon clucked his tongue. It was clear they'd planned this as soon as he left the battlefield, certain that he'd chase after the successor to the Black King. Even he would have a difficult time dealing with so many greater gods at the same time. Haha. Typhon, I know that you recovered your original strength when your divinity was released, but I don't think you'll be able to deal with all of us here, Ares gloated as he pulled out his sword. Typhon clucked his tongue again as he looked at the superior beings around him with dissatisfaction. Yes. It'll be difficult for me. But, his eyes flashed under his heavy hair. It'll be difficult for you as well. Swoosh. All of a sudden, Typhon disappeared and a raging storm whirled in his place, ripping the atmosphere apart. As if they had been waiting for this, Ares and the other greater gods moved as one to protect Yeon-woo. Boom. Swish. In the middle of a ferocious battle that shook the world, Yeon-woo realized it was an opportunity. He used open speaking with Dis-Pluto, telling them to run to my Yeongbujin. Where do you think you're going? Typhon sent a rushing gust of wind between the greater gods in order to catch Yeon-woo. Ares quickly moved, but the sharp wind was faster. Slash. A new superior being popped up and swung his spear, cleanly cutting off Typhon's wind. Right now, I'll treat you as Hades' next king, but that won't happen the next time we meet. With those words, the blue-haired greater god dashed past Yeon-woo towards Typhon. Rumble. Poseidon. Yeon-woo muttered the name of the god who had been his enemy for so long but saved his life this time. Then, he began running again. Chapter 392. Gigantomachia, 17. Why are you like this even until the end? Persephone muttered quietly as she looked at Hades. He was kneeling and supporting himself with a sword, looking as though he were simply taking a breather after an intense battle. Despite her cold wintry aura, for a moment, different emotions flickered on her face. She had always resented her husband. He had stolen her youth, but there were times when she'd nearly reciprocated his feelings. He had always loved her sincerely. Although he'd never been able to properly express himself because of his indifferent personality, it was impossible for her not to know how much effort he took to appease her. Because of that, she had contemplated for a long time before deciding to make a contract with Mother Earth. Although she had resented her husband at first, after some time passed, she had begun to let go of her hard feelings. She'd hesitated because she knew that making a contract with Mother Earth would mean endangering Olympus, where her mother was. When Hades discovered her secret, Persephone hadn't yet been an apostle of Mother Earth. If Hades had spoken with her instead of running away, perhaps things would have turned out differently today. Horrible fool! But those possibilities were meaningless now. Because of you, I've become a villain, someone who has betrayed both husband and family while you'll remain someone great. She had made her decision, and she couldn't turn back now. In that case, I'll become an even greater villain. Persephone stroked Hades' face with her hand. There was still warmth lingering on his unshaven face. Before it could disappear, Hades' body disintegrated. Whoosh! Persephone's expression stiffened. It's not here. She opened her palm. It was filled with dust that slipped between her fingers. The important thing that she should be holding wasn't there, the thing that only the king of the underworld possessed, the godly ability of death. After the Black King had faded away, many godly societies had taken a piece of this. In Olympus, Hades had been the recipient, and he had descended to the underworld with it. But where was it? Why couldn't she see it? It was impossible for it to be lost, and she looked around just in case she'd missed it. But even as Hades' dust faded away, she couldn't find it at all. A thought occurred to Persephone. Is it possible? Had Hades already given it to someone else? She thought of Yeon-woo, but she couldn't think of when they might have made the exchange. The throne wasn't something that could be handed over that easily. Also, since the recipient was a mere mortal, the system and Al-Foroni would have refused to allow it to happen. Had Hades made his preparations expecting this? When? The questions that filled her head didn't change the fact that the power of the throne had been taken right from under her nose. The power of the throne was a necessary part of making Tartarus completely hers because it possessed the right of ownership. Persephone slowly stood. You made things complicated until the end. I do hate you. With those words, she released the last of her level which she'd been suppressing. Whoosh! Her body disappeared with the wind, and a shadow crept along the ground of the holy territory. It was around then that darkness began to flood the ground like water, rising up to the knees of those remaining on the battlefield before releasing a black haze in the air. The haze rose in streams, twisting like pretzels until they formed thousands of huge tentacles that shot up to the sky as though a cage had been set over the holy territory. What is that? Athena, who was fighting Crius, had a sudden ominous feeling and looked up. Hermes, Ares, Poseidon, and the others who were dealing with Typhon also turned to see what was happening. That's... no way! Unbelievable! The tentacles began to combine into a black shape with a strange aura that exuded a power that should not be manifesting. It was the aura of the common enemy of all gods and demons, Mother Earth. She was attempting to descend. What are you doing, Typhon? Poseidon glared at Typhon, but Typhon just laughed maniacally. Ha ha ha! Looks like our queen has decided to go all the way. She tried to stay above the fray, but I guess things haven't gone as she hoped. As soon as his laughter ended, the black form exploded and darkness spread across the sky. Boom! It slowly took shape, growing to an enormous size that made the Titans look tiny. Although only its torso could be seen, its shadow was gigantic enough to loom over the entire Tartarus. Soon, Persephone's face emerged from the gigantic entity. She looked down at the ground, her torn wings of darkness spreading behind her as she directly manifested Mother Earth. She roared, and storms churned, sweeping away both divine beings and superior beings as they battled. The columns of the temples were pulled up by the roots, and the ground turned over, forming large mountains. Persephone was so large that she couldn't speak or use open speaking. However, her powerful will could be interpreted by everyone present. Find him. Catch him. She rolled her eyes as she projected her will onto Tartarus once more. The hidden true name of Vigrid, Durandal, is released. Folklore, Giant Association. Whoosh! Whoosh! The flames blazed. You have succeeded in killing Tityos. The killing of another god has been added to your achievements. You have achieved. You have succeeded in stealing a piece of holiness from Tityos. The holiness is added to the incomplete sections of the throne. You have gained an additional clue on transcendence. Even though they'd managed to avoid Crius and Typhon, Pluto's troubles didn't end. Titans and giants intensified their chase, rushing in to take advantage of this opportunity to completely eliminate Pluto and nip any future problems in the bud. Yeon-woo had to destroy them while Shannon, Han Ryeong, Rebecca, and Bu prevented them from moving. He spread his fire wings, flying among the enemies. He lost count of the number of monsters and gods he cut down. Because he was fighting too many at once, the Philosopher's Stone began to overheat. Although he had the purple magic power of the Soul Stone and his demonic draconic divine body that had been awakened to the fourth step, they weren't enough to remove his mental exhaustion. If there was a silver lining, it was that he could steal a bit of holiness from gods when he killed them. Previously, he didn't know what to do with holiness and had only guessed it, but after receiving the power of the throne from Hades, he finally understood what to do. Holiness was the power that allowed one to possess a divine level. It wasn't always good to have an enormous divine level. Although it gave you the upper hand in battles, you also risked falling as much as you rose, since maintaining a high divine level put a lot of stress on the soul. It also created a lot of vulnerabilities. However, if you possessed a great amount of holiness, things were different. Holiness was the power that allowed you to maintain a level and make it steady. However, it wasn't easy to gain holiness. You had to gain a lot of followers or acquire the knowledge to replace it with transcendence. However, unlike gods with countless followers, there were constraints on how Yeon-woo could gain holiness because he was immortal. He couldn't use the power of the throne because of his lack of divine level, but if he could steal holiness from those he killed, he could make up for it and build a foundation as he steadily awakened the power of the throne. Rumble. Crash. With the acquired holiness, the sealed power eyes within darkness has been successfully released. The power eyes within darkness is being used to recognize the nature of the underworld. To a limited extent, he could use the power of the throne as he awakened the powers. He had bound the power of gods and demons to wings because of how hard it was to control them, but he had no need to do that with the power of the throne since it stemmed from a domain he already possessed. Boom! How many times had he swung the Ruyi Bang and Vigrid? Ha, ha, ha! Yeon-woo and Pluto were nearly at their destination, the Myeongbujin. Yeon-woo could see the great mountain, Cronus Corpse, that divided the land. The pocket watch in his breast pocket trembled the closer he grew to the corpse, reacting in the same manner as the cast of the Black King. Since Cronus had the power of the Black King, it was probably an automatic response. However, Yeon-woo didn't have the time to wonder about it. They're coming again. A new group had appeared in pursuit. Damn it! I'm fighting to my heart's content today. What are those Olympus bastards doing? Why didn't they take care of those? Shannon grumbled with an exhausted expression. It was fun to grow, but balance was important too. Fighting continuously like this was tiring him out. Human! I'll kill you this time? Him again? Doesn't he get tired? Iapeto's face appeared. Yeon-woo had thought he would meet his end after releasing all his divinity, but there he was running towards them in his giant form, looking like he'd recovered. Of course, he was weaker compared to before, but he was still leagues ahead of lower-level divine beings. He exuded a murderous intent, clearly wanting to pay back the humiliation he'd suffered. Your Majesty. Pluto looked at Yeon-woo in concern. Go ahead first since we're not that far away. Without waiting for their reply, Yeon-woo rolled out his wings and shot towards Iapetos. He was putting a lot of stress on his body, but he unfurled both wings of death and fight at the same time, the countless powers supporting the power of the throne. Yeon-woo directly clashed with Iapetos, blowing him back. Iapetos grunted, his eyes widening. He didn't expect to lose based on strength alone. How did the mortal become so strong in the span of only a few months? Yeon-woo rushed towards him again. He had already used sky wings multiple times, and so he didn't have much time left. He needed to end things before he bumped into the limit. Boom! He brandished the Ruyi Bang with vigor, slicing Iapetos' chest open. Black smoke spurted out like blood, the remnants of Cronus. The despair of the Black King sucked in the black smoke. Iapetos' eyes turned red as the same thing as before happened again. He couldn't allow his power to be stolen from him like that once more, but Yeon-woo was a difficult opponent. With every clash, he suffered more injuries. As they battled, Yeon-woo began to reach his physical limits. He kept suffering internal injuries, and Iapetos broke his limbs multiple times. Yeon-woo had to regenerate them again and again. Rumble. The two were pushed back by a large collision. When Yeon-woo flapped his wings to end the fight, something unexpected occurred. A black tsunami appeared and began to head their way. My queen! What is? Iapetos was swallowed up by the black tsunami before he could even finish speaking, and the tsunami tried to swallow Yeon-woo next. Persephone? Mother Earth? Or Viera Dune? He didn't know for sure who it was, but it was certain that the black tsunami that looked like sticky tar wasn't something he could fight. Hyung? Jeong-woo shouted out, seeing the danger. Yeon-woo gritted his teeth and beat his wings to retreat quickly, not forgetting to collect all the souls and monsters lying around. If they were eaten by the darkness, it would be hard to find them again. I can't let it get to Pluto. Yeon-woo scanned Myeongbujin. Pluto was nearing the column of light. Khan and the others were helping them get to the higher floors as Yeon-woo had ordered. He had to buy more time. Just as he was about to turn, the black tsunami abruptly changed its course and moved towards the column of light as though it knew what Yeon-woo was thinking. Shit! Yeon-woo returned and shot his powers one after the other to delay the tsunami, but he barely affected the tsunami and couldn't even slow it down. Give me the throne! The tsunami's thoughts annoyed Yeon-woo. He could sense the voice of Mother Earth mixed with either Persephone's or Viera Dune's voice. It sounded like it was obsessed with him. Soon, Yeon-woo reached the column of light. However, less than half of the members of Pluto had ascended. The situation was truly dangerous. Yeon-woo stopped retreating and gripped the Ruyi Bang. Even though he risked being swallowed by the tsunami, he needed to stop it. Time difference. Yeon-woo began looking for solutions. Mother Earth and Persephone's tsunami was right at his feet, and the wings of death and fight weren't enough to block it. He needed help, but Athena, Hermes, and the others were tied up as well. In that moment, Yeon-woo read the many gazes that were looking at him. The King of Seven Hells watches your throne. Ksadagarba watches your throne. The gods and demons of death had watched Yeon-woo without too many reactions after he received the throne from Hades. He finally understood why. They were trying to help him. They didn't see him as someone to test but acknowledged him as Hades' successor, someone who was an equal. Even though that wasn't quite reality yet, it would be one day in the future. When he realized this, Yeon-woo found himself holding a new ace. Regular time returned, and just before Mother Earth's black tsunami reached him, Yeon-woo licked his lips. Come! As soon as he spoke, black-red light exploded and expanded from his body. Flash! It burned brighter than the wing of death ever had. At that moment, all 666 gods and demons of death manifested into Yeon-woo's body. Chapter 393 Gigantomachia, 18. Nergal has succeeded in manifesting. Halfas has failed to manifest. The King of Seven Hells has failed to manifest. Yeon-woo felt a spike of dizziness. It was a ludicrous thing to attempt the manifestation of 666 gods and demons through their channels with the help of the Death Wing. He'd seen Poseidon forcibly manifest through Bentik, and many gods had already manifested through Yeon-woo's own body, but none of those experiences could be compared to a manifestation with this staggering number. He wasn't even sure if it was possible. If he didn't have the throne of the underworld, and they weren't bound to one category of the Death Wing, he never would have attempted it. The feeling of the will of so many gods and demons already forced down an intense pressure on him, and his soul felt as though it would be crushed. Although he had grown, he was still tiny in the face of these divine beings. It was only thanks to the power of the throne that Yeon-woo managed to bear it without collapsing. When his body reached a critical point, dragon scales erupted on his skin. This time, they were thicker and sturdier than ever, and they covered his entire body like armor. His dragon wings and tail finally grew completely. Whoosh! The pressure that emanated only from the draconic species burst out of him like a wave, and he now exuded the true energy of a dragon, beyond that of a dragon human or polymorph because of the change inscribed in his heart. His heart shook turbulently, breaking and recovering over and over. After this process, his heart slowly took on the form of a bead. The heart was the center of life and pumped blood out through countless veins. It was also a magic power organ that created and distributed all magic power. His heart was now rapidly changing, evolving from its original function to a superior organ, modifying the magic circuit along with it. Thump! Thump! Still in the shape of a bead, his newly recreated heart pumped fiercely, sending his blood around his body faster and releasing greater amounts of magic power. The symbol of the draconic species and root of all the powers they possessed was finally born, a dragon heart. It was on a completely different level from what Yeon-woo had possessed before and lived up to its fame as the most efficient magic power organ. It was so grand and mighty that it felt as if the mana stream of the fourth step of the awakening had been forced into his body. It was the fifth step of the awakening. The fifth step of the awakening has been released. Power, element establishment. Element establishment. Description: the ancient dragon Kalidas set up an 8-step process to help the contractor adjust to the dragon body quickly. This is the fifth step. The magic power that arises from the dragon heart is put into contact with the mana stream in the atmosphere, and this flow allows you to use and establish any elements in your domain at random. Heart. The center of the dragon, the heart can take in magic power and emit it outside the body. The magic power used during this process interferes with ideas. Magic can be established according to your will and proficiency. Breath. You can now integrate the element in the mana according to your preference. The elements that are condensed during this process allow you to implement magic more efficiently and can also be used for elemental attacks. His dragon heart was more than enough to support his demonic draconic divine body, which had just been strong hardware. And not only that, the Philosopher's Stone began to resonate with the pumping of the dragon heart. The magic circuit created from the two magic power organs took on the form of a Mobius strip and burst with amplified strength. His demonic draconic divine body tensed one more. Yeon-woo wanted to laugh out loud. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. When he had first acquired the Philosopher's Stone, he had wondered how much power he could display if he possessed both the completed Philosopher's Stone and Dragon Heart. The Dragon Heart was a necessary component since he wanted to become a dragon, and he had seen for himself how far the Summer Queen fell after losing hers. The Philosopher's Stone was a well-known magic power organ that was said to be as powerful as a dragon heart. If they resonated together, he was sure something incredible would happen, but this exceeded even his wildest expectations. Was his power amplified twice? 3 times? It was impossible to calculate because it could be even more, depending how he used it. Halfaz made another attempt to manifest. He has succeeded. The King of Seven Hells made another attempt to manifest. He has succeeded. The gods and demons who had failed to descend previously now managed to enter his strengthened body. Ha! Pretty good? He could hear the faint laughter of what he assumed to be the demonism. As the manifestations continued, he could feel the strength of the category growing clearer. The vague power of the throne became vivid, and Yeon-woo was struck by a sudden understanding of the divine ability he possessed. This was death, the only concept that affected all living and non-living beings equally. Of course, Yeon-woo was too small to completely understand the profoundness of the concept, but it was a great accomplishment to even grasp its form. Yeon-woo transferred his newly added power into the Ruyi Bang. All powers have been released. All 3 pairs of sky wings unfurled, and black flames blazed on the grid, still attached to the tip of the Ruyi Bang. The highly concentrated magic power shook up the sturdy shape of the aura. Yeon-woo clasped his spear and created a vortex in the air, lashing Ruyi Bang to the side. This was the power of the draconic species he'd learned after the 5th step of the awakening. Breath. The draconic species could attack by gathering a specific element in their mouths then blasting it out. Since it was the condensed form of an element, breath was always potent. However, the breath Yeon-woo shot out was a bit different. The draconic species used their mouths for breath because of their physical forms, but Yeon-woo felt more comfortable using the weapon in his hand. The aura shot out of the tip of the Ruyi Bang and turned into breath. It split the approaching tsunami of darkness in 2. Although the darkness quickly reformed, it was clear to Yeon-woo that the tsunami had slowed. It works. His eyes flashed as he clutched the Ruyi Bang tighter. He began to shoot breath one after the other. Enlarge, Ruyi. Swoosh. 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 The breath that started from the vortex poured down on the tsunami of darkness like heavy rain. Osiris has succeeded in manifesting. Izanami has succeeded in manifesting. As the manifestations continued, the fire power of the breath became stronger. Flames grew to towering heights, creating the terrifying sight of darkness and fire assailing each other as though they would make the world shatter. Yeon-woo just gritted his teeth. Although the awakening and manifestations had made him temporarily forget his physical limits, he couldn't keep it going forever. It was already an incredible feat to maintain the manifestations and bear the weight of so many gods and demons despite being immortal. Even with the power of the throne, it was impossible without an ironclad mentality. Boom, rumble. As Yeon-woo blocked Mother Earth on his own, most of Pluto disappeared beyond the column of light. Finally, the 12th Corps, the last of their soldiers, finally left. Khan, who stayed until the end to guard them, frantically called Yeon-woo through open speaking. Kane? He had to hurry. Yeon-woo nodded. His body was already overheated beyond endurance, and he had finally met his limits. He was already risking the explosion of both the Dragon Heart and Philosopher's Stone, and his scales had turned red, exhaling steam. Yeon-woo swung the Ruyi Bang from below once more, his teeth clenched. The earth was torn up, and it shot tens of meters up to the sky. The sparks created a large wave of light, and more fire lightning than ever seemed possible rained down from the sky. Rumble. Beautiful blood flowers bloomed with Vimalasitra's black Gubatera at the spots where the bolts fell and ate away at the darkness. Vimalasitra is overjoyed at your performance. Sir Nunnos watches your performance with tranquil eyes. The tsunami of darkness smashed against the blazing fire and stopped. Meanwhile, Yeon-woo's wings spun around as he quickly retreated to the column of light. A deep wail rose from the tsunami of darkness. Give it. That is mine. Tentacles rapidly lashed through the netting of fire towards Yeon-woo, determined not to let him go. Rumble. Releasing his breath once more, Yeon-woo roughly pushed back the tentacles. When Khan entered the column of light, he quickly jumped in, as well. Instantly, the world changed. You are out of the hidden stage, Tartarus. You have entered the designated location, the 35th floor, Gate of Thunder. What's going on? Where are all those people coming from? The hoarder? Isn't that the hoarder? He's been lying low for some time, what's he done now? The commotion drew many people to the stage, surprised by the large portal that discharged so many mysterious-looking soldiers. Yeon-woo had asked Brahm to transport them to the 35th floor. After receiving the throne of the underworld, he now had the ability to change the settings of Tartarus, so he gave this authority to Brahm so he could set the coordinates. Yeon-woo had cleared 34 floors so far, and it was possible to enter the 35th floor since he was scheduled to arrive, anyway. At first, they had been planning to exit to the outer district of the tower, from where Yeon-woo had entered Tartarus. However, he'd ended up choosing the stage because it was under the administration of the Guardians. The heavenly world couldn't interfere here, and even Mother Earth's strength would be weakened. And I can also clear the 35th floor easily while I'm here. Darkness shot up at the portal. The stage shook violently as a wave of fury burst through. Give it. But Yeon-woo just smirked and shot his breath again. Vigrid's blade cut through the darkness as though it were butter. It cried out loudly, as if it were trying to force itself through the portal. The system has been alerted that a godly being is attempting to interfere in the stage. A guardian has been dispatched. What is that? I am scared. Mother Earth? What has he done? Ohio. Looks like our mischievous number has caused another large problem. Spectacular. Ohio. High guardians appeared in the sky, all looking surprised to see Mother Earth. Tartarus was a divine territory that guardians couldn't observe, so they hadn't known what was happening there. However, when Ivalka saw Yeon-woo gasping for breath in the distance, he adjusted his monocle and burst out laughing, immediately understanding the situation. At the same time, the guardians began to move. Control is being administered. The interference of the being has been blocked. The interference of the being has been blocked. The High Guardians transformed into light once they landed on the ground and the laws of the stage began to act. The colossal portal that connected Tartarus and the 35th stage began to close. No. Mother Earth's darkness resisted violently, still trying to enter, but Yeon-woo clutched the Ruyi Bang and shoved it through the closing portal. Crunch! Yes. Along with the wailing screams of Mother Earth, the connection to Tartarus was cut off just like that. The noisy 35th floor became silent once more. Ding! All trials have ended. Will you go to the 36th floor? Chapter 394. Thunder, 1. Ksitigarbha has ended his manifestation. The King of Seven Hells has ended his manifestation. Ismitava has ended his manifestation. Thud. Yeon-woo collapsed to the ground, extremely exhausted. The soul power that filled up his body was sucked back out and the violently circulating Dragon Heart and Philosopher's Stone slowly came to a stop. The manifestation of 666 transcendence had only gone on for a mere 5 minutes, but its impact was formidable. The cool-down time of Skywings stretched out for such a long period that he thought it would be impossible to use them for a while. The world spun. If he didn't have the Dragon Heart, what could have happened? He didn't even want to think about it. Ha! He couldn't even muster the strength to breathe properly, and he thought that if he died, it would be from exhaustion. However, the Philosopher's Stone had limitless magic power and a depth that could not be comprehended, and it was already ridding him of his fatigue with the purple energy. When he somewhat regained his energy, he managed to lift his head and look around. Everything was in ruins. The ground had been turned up, and it was impossible to tell that they were on a stage. Deep traces of holy power were left in places like the sky. She sure played rough. He had been so out of it after closing the portal that he hadn't noticed how vast the traces that Mother Earth left behind were. Her will alone was enough to make the stage shake. What would happen if her actual body appeared? He couldn't even imagine it. Kane. Just then, his comrades came running over. Khan scanned Yeon-woo's body and helped him by using a bean for recovery. Brahm immediately cast healing magic, as well. As his external injuries mended rapidly, Yeon-woo asked, "What about Doyle and Henova?" "Doyle's still sleeping. Victoria was able to move Mr. Henova to the outer district, so he's fine." Yeon-woo nodded in relief. All of Dis Pluto escaped safely too. Yeon-woo turned to Dis Pluto. As he met the soldiers' eyes, they tried to get up to greet their new master, but Yeon-woo shook his head, indicating that there was no need to. They were just as exhausted as he was, perhaps even more so. Since they lost the master they had been serving all their lives as well as their lands in the span of a day, their feelings were evidently full of turmoil. They needed some time to organize their thoughts and rest. The soldiers thanked him instead of paying their respects. They had been cut down to less than half of their number at their peak, but their eyes blazed with a fire that was brighter than ever. Yeon-woo had been worried they'd be sunk in despair, but fortunately, his concerns were unfounded. More importantly, he moved his gaze to the message that popped up in his vision. "You have completed the first condition of the sudden quest, Exodus. What's going on?" The first condition of completing the Exodus quest was to earn Dis Pluto's trust. This hadn't been too difficult because he had already gained their trust after fighting with them several times. Also, he'd been acknowledged as Hades' successor while escaping from Mother Earth. However, he'd been expecting a message to say that he'd also completed the second condition, escaping Tartarus, but none had appeared. Does this mean the Exodus isn't over yet? Had any soldiers been left behind in Tartarus? It wouldn't be a complete surprise if they'd left 1 or 2 soldiers behind, considering how chaotic the situation had been. However, the system should be aware of that. Or did it mean Mother Earth would harm them in some other way? But how? In the meantime, the High Guardians bustled around. They had temporarily paused the stage mission, using backup data to restore the damaged areas. Just then, Ivalka approached, pushing his monocle up. "Ohio Hiohia. Number, this is the second time after the 23rd floor. Now that I think about it, you also performed fantastically on the 11th floor, yes? It seems to be your hobby to ruin stages every 10 floors. His eyes curved with a smile. "Next time, please alert us beforehand. We'll be able to prepare ourselves, Ohio. Although it wasn't as though he'd been destroying floors for fun, Yeon-woo only smiled ruefully with a nod. "I'll do that next time. Ohio Hia. I like that mindset. I like you because you understand things quickly." Also Ivalka's eyes narrowed. "We need you to provide a testimony about what happened. Can you come with us?" The Guardians watched over all the floors closely, but there were places their eyes couldn't reach. It seems like there are different arrangements between the Transcendents and Guardians that players don't know about. At the very least, from what I've seen, they didn't like to take interest in each other. The Heavenly World on the 98th floor and the hidden stages every 10 floors were such cases, as was Tartarus. Because of Hades' settings, the Guardians couldn't check what happened in Tartarus, and now this had happened. It was understandable that they needed to investigate the matter. Yeon-woo was planning to help them to some extent since he'd used the Guardians, who abhorred Transcendence, to help him with Mother Earth. Also, there was no knowing what would happen if he didn't help them. Ivalka, who had been watching Yeon-woo make his decision, suddenly felt sharp gazes around him. For the past few minutes, Dis Pluto had been getting up to surround him, pointing spears still wet with blood at him. A fierce atmosphere rose. However, Ivalka seemed to be unaffected as he lightly fixed his monocle and looked around. What's this now? Did I do something to get on the bad side of you underworld sirs? You may not realize this, but I've placed manners before everything else all my life. Ahem. You cannot take our king without permission. Our king? Ivalka tilted his head and laughed when he realized what was going on. We'd been wondering what happened because there was a system message that the king of the underworld had changed, and that person is, oh, right. It's a secret. Ahem. How amusing. Ivilka had been expecting that the exodus of Pluto had something to do with the throne of the underworld. However, from the way he giggled, it seemed like he found it surprising that Yeon-woo was at the center of it all. It was unthinkable that the throne would have been passed down to a player, even if it was someone like Yeon-woo. It was so shocking that Ivilka couldn't have even dared imagine it. The Pluto members glanced at Yeon-woo, wondering if they'd made a mistake. Yeon-woo was smiling ruefully under his mask, but he pretended to be calm as he spoke to Ivilka. I'll help with the investigation, but in exchange. You want us to do this? Ivilka made the motion of zipping his mouth. As Yeon-woo nodded, Ivilka smiled slyly. Ohio-hia. You don't have to worry about that. I'll keep it from the other guardians as well. There was no need to speak of this amusing fact to others. To Ivilka, Yeon-woo was like sweet rain during a boring day. However, as your dear friend and a high guardian, I have some advice. Ivilka's eye briefly glittered under his monocle. So many soldiers of the underworld entering this stage may be considered an invasion of territory. Just as we managed Mother Earth, we can use the same control on them. You should be aware of this. There were a few lower-level divine beings among the Pluto, and although they were considered weak during the Gigantomachia, in reality, they had a power that most players would never reach in their lives. Since there were hundreds of them here, they were a force that could break the balance of the stage. Because the system prioritized the stage over everything else, Pluto could be identified as irregularities. In fact, the stage seemed to be acting on them already. Their faces were pale, and they were clearly unaccustomed to such a different environment from Tartarus. Their strength was being limited already, and although the constraints ended there, the Guardians could activate their control at any time. However, Yeon-woo wasn't too worried. The third condition of the quest was to find a new base camp for Pluto, and he'd already thought of a place. Whose dungeon will be good enough? The dungeon, which was a space that connected multiple Intrinians from Red Dragon, was almost complete. It was large enough to house all of Pluto, and if the environment settings were set to be like those of Tartarus, it would be an ideal place for them to temporarily stay. The system wouldn't try to interfere either. If he tried to use Pluto to clear the stage, the system's control would activate, but if he was only looking for a place to stay, it would likely let them be. After he exoviated and properly grasped the throne, he could pull them out. However, Ivilka shook his finger back and forth as if he could read Yeon-woo's mind. That's not what I mean. Of course you know your way around the system's loopholes. But the problem is that the control in this tower isn't just limited to the system. Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes, not understanding. There was a controlling force other than the system? He had never heard of it. He asked Jeong-woo with his mind power, but received a negative response. I don't know either. Just as he was about to ask Ivilka what he meant, the calm sky suddenly began to shake. The High Guardians who were restoring the stage paused and looked up with frowns. Pluto and Yeon-woo's comrades realized something strange was going on. They raised their heads, their weapons and shields ready. The sky was distorting. The appearance of a sky that was twisting and deforming was impossible to describe, and it was as fearsome as it was impressive. As the sky split into cracks, colorful auroras appeared through the fissures, dyeing the sky different colors. A heavy fog began to gather. Yeon-woo felt shivers down his back. Although he hadn't attempted the dragon body awakening, scales were automatically growing on his skin. They were tougher than ever, a sign of his nervousness at the celestial display. If Mother Earth herself descended, would it feel like this? No, this was more extreme and overpowering. A formidable existence was trying to pass through the fragmented sky, forcing back the High Guardian's control and putting pressure on the entire stage. What is that? Even Pluto was nervous. They had dealt with Typhon multiple times already, but this being was leagues beyond Typhon. It seemed as though the sky had come to life. However, although it was Yeon-woo's first time seeing this phenomenon, he recognized it. Jeong-woo appeared next to Yeon-woo in his spiritual form and muttered in a voice full of mixed emotions, "Alforoni?" The being who had been a wall to countless players for the last 1,000 years, a focus of hatred for transcendence, and an exception to the rules for the Guardians, was trying to descend. Chapter 395. Thunder, 2. Alforoni was a wall that had stood over players like a mountain. He was considered to be the strongest player ever since the foundation of the tower, and even the greatest king of the one-horned tribe, the Martial King, couldn't defeat him. The pressure that radiated from him was extraordinary, and it was a wonder that he wasn't a god. Kasidagarba roars. Hell raises his wings, firmly on guard. Halfas glares at the being with a grim gaze. Vimalasitra shuts his mouth. Sir Nunno stands with rough movements. Many gods look at the sight with enraged gazes. Many demons watch the situation cautiously. The responses of the gods and demons connected to Yeon-woo were diverse, but they all had one thing in common: fury. Their intense feeling of hostility towards Alforoni was evidence of how much he'd frustrated them for so long. No one knows Alforoni's goal. He's blocked the 77th floor for a long time, dividing the sky and the earth, preventing players from heading up and gods and demons from reaching below. Hades had said in passing that the gods and demons called Alforoni the divider of the heavens and the earth. He also said that Alforoni wanted the line between transcendents and mortals to be distinct. If a transcendent tried to interfere in a stage, he would immediately restrict them, and when a mortal entered a transcendent's territory, he would chase them out. Tartarus was a bit of an in-between place, so he mostly observed, but if Pluto interfered in a stage, he would immediately step up. From the perspective of the gods and demons, Alforoni's actions were closer to a guardian's than a player's. He was like the will of the system. If the system were a living being, it would probably do what Alforoni was doing, which was why the gods and demons hated him. They called him the tower's apostle. The entity began to speak. The energy in the heavens was messed up, and I was wondering what happened. So, you're the new king of the underworld. I don't know if I should be wary or congratulate you. This is the first time something like this happened, so I'm in a strange position. Yeon-woo didn't feel an oppressive power from Alforoni. It felt like something else. It's too amplified, as though he's more than one person. If thousands of people gathered in the same place and spoke in one voice, this was probably what it would sound like. There were so many voices mixed into one, so many energies expressed in a single form. It made Yeon-woo wonder whether Alforoni was really an individual. The great entity that filled the stage radiated his will as he continued to speak. And the soldiers of the underworld have not only appeared on the stage, but have also caused this mess. This is a clear infringement of the pledge. Are you aware of that? Although the huge fog that was presumably Alforoni remained in the sky, the members of Pluto all straightened their backs, immediately on guard. It was as though an immeasurable gaze were trained on them, like a massive beast was wondering what to do about a bunch of puppies in its territory. They were elite soldiers that had protected Tartarus, and despite being lower-level divine beings, they still possessed divinity. But all of this seemed futile in front of Alforoni. They swallowed. Of course they were aware of the pledge. They didn't know the details, but Hades had told them that it had been made between the heavenly world and Alforoni. They wouldn't interfere in each other's territories, and if they did, they wouldn't resist any physical action taken against them. If Alforoni wanted to follow the pledge to the letter, it meant that Pluto was clearly in the wrong. Even if they resisted, Alforoni would decimate them easily, especially since their bodies were already stressed from the unfamiliar environment of the stage. Yeon-woo was also aware of their predicament. Hades had passed down a great deal of his knowledge along with the throne, and that included the pledge. Damn it! He thought he could finally take a breather after evading Mother Earth, the Titans, and Giants, but it was just mountain after mountain. In fact, this wasn't even a mountain, it was a volcano. I have to persuade him somehow. Still, it was a relief that unlike Mother Earth, who was simply a being full of greed, Alforoni seemed more rational and likely to compromise. Yeon-woo had to get Alforoni to cut him a break when it came to the pledge. Otherwise, he definitely wasn't someone to take on. What could he say that would convince Alforoni to leave Pluto alone? His quick mind wasn't at its best right now due to the tension and fatigue from the battles he'd just endured. Just then, Jeong-woo looked up at the sky and slowly stepped forward. Alforoni, do you remember me? Surprised, Yeon-woo tried to stop him, but Jeong-woo waved his hand, indicating that it was okay. Alforoni chuckled good-naturedly. Even with your misaligned luck and short fate, you roamed around and around in the skies. I see you've cobbled together a likeness in the end? For some reason, Yeon-woo felt like the words weren't directed to Jeong-woo but to him. A likeness? What did Alforoni see? However, Alforoni turned back to Jeong-woo as though he didn't want to speak further about it. Yes, long time no see, child from the past? Jeong-woo nodded solemnly. Thanks to what you said back then, I'm able to be here like this? I didn't do anything. Your desire was just so desperate that your life took that shape? It was only then that Yeon-woo learned that Jeong-woo had been inspired by Alforoni to create the diary in Superbia. I still want to thank you. I'm glad to hear you say that. You look healthy, so it's a relief. As they reminisced, the atmosphere seemed to grow lighter and more amiable. Jeong-woo continued with a bright face, then. Impossible? The reply was cold. You want to say they're people who've helped you and that nothing else could be done? And that they'll be so quiet that they won't disturb the lower world? Jeong-woo closed his mouth since Alforoni had anticipated all of his words. Alforoni's tone was still affectionate, but his words were strict. There are no exceptions. Yeon-woo and Jeong-woo felt their hearts contract. If I turn a blind eye now, then I'll have to turn a blind eye to other situations? At those words, Pluto raised their weapons as one. Clang! They thrust their shields forward and lifted their spears high. A dense fighting spirit filled the battlefield as though it were trying to push away Alforoni's pressure. Geez, nothing's ever easy. Is this all the result of our master's charming temper? Shannon clucked his tongue as he pulled out Sword Breaker and kicked off from the ground. Boom! Swish! He turned into a ray of light in the sky and immediately blasted his signature skill, Volcano. As the red flames spread around him, Han Ryeong and Rebecca supported him from the back, shooting projectiles. Gigantic eyes opened in midair as Boo set up innumerable magic circles that attacked Alforoni at the same time. Con and Galliard struck, sending small explosions erupting in the fog. Shannon was already a high ranker, and everyone helping him was skilled too. They thought that even if they couldn't stop Alforoni, they could injure him at the very least. Rumble! The heavy aura in the fog suddenly shook, and something limp fell to the ground. Shannon? Han Ryeong realized who it was and frantically ran. What had happened? Shannon, who had been fine just a moment ago, was now critically injured. His body was about to crack and had grown fainter, meaning his existence was at risk of being destroyed. The members of Pluto stiffened. They knew how strong Shannon was after seeing him in battle, but he had been defeated so easily without even a chance to fight back. It was a perilous situation. Shannon's attacks also didn't seem to have affected Alforoni at all, but Con and the others thought that Alforoni might crush them right away if they didn't make a move. They began to activate their signature skills. Cut! Full capacity! Con swung his blood sword, dividing space and sending red projectiles shooting to the sky, pulling up his beam to its fullest. With Brahm's help, Galliard shot arrows without rest, and Kreutz brought up Zulfikar's holy power to its maximum to buff them to an extraordinary degree. Pluto soldiers also released their levels at once. Their fighting intent whirled around the stage, endangering it. The stage that was still being restored after Mother Earth's interference was once again in bedlam. Aok! How am I supposed to do this all over again? The High Guardians rubbed their heads, screaming at the sudden doubling of their tasks. Guardians like Loopy tried to transport the players to the floor below so they wouldn't become involved, but it didn't work, and the system kept on repeating the same message. Error! Error! What in the world? Ohio. It's like when the Martial King was causing a ruckus. What a mess! Ohio! Ohio! Do you think this is the right time to be laughing, you damned goblin? Do something! As Ivilka laughed, and shock spread among the Guardians, the aura shook once more. Flash! A huge ray of light blinded everyone. When their sight returned, they discovered that everyone who had challenged Alforoni had collapsed on the ground, vomiting blood. The fierce fighting intent from just a minute ago was nowhere to be found. Damn it! What the? Clutching his chest, Kong glared at Alforoni. He had no idea what had just happened. When the light flashed, he felt his magic power stop and his skill fail, and the backlash had damaged his body severely. The mana stream flowing in the atmosphere had been stopped too, just like the system messages. Everything was turned upside down. It was as if the system were behaving according to Alforoni's wishes. He continued to hang in the sky as though he'd anticipated everything, and he protected his will on the 77th floor, not even showing himself. And technically, the throne of the underworld shouldn't be here either. I can stay silent about the pieces of the Black King, but no more than that. Alforoni's gaze shifted to Yeon-woo. Yeon-woo gritted his teeth. He wanted to fight next to everyone else, but his body simply wouldn't allow it. He'd used up all of his strength in the battle with Mother Earth. He tried to force his powers out. The fifth step of the awakening has failed. The fifth step of the awakening has failed. That wasn't all. Your connection with Orlen Shen is unstable. The power dragon kill has been paused. Your connection with Agars is unstable. The power wicked devil has been paused. A message from Agars has arrived. Message, Alforoni, you bastard, what? The message has failed to send due to unspecified reasons. A message from Agars has arrived. Message, don't cut me. The message has failed to send due to unspecified reasons. The channels that always surrounded him had grown faint or were completely disconnected. Since the sky wings were tied to the powers of the gods and demons, they had become useless. I must correct it. After determining that the throne of the underworld that Yeon-woo had received was a threat to the ecosystem of the tower, Alforoni stepped up to take it from him. A light flashed once more. Yeon-woo felt like a huge hand was crushing him, and he was powerless to resist. No matter how much he wanted to struggle, his body didn't move, and only his consciousness seemed to be awake in a world that had slowed down. Just as he was wondering whether he would be destroyed in such a powerless state, Jeong-woo appeared in front of him in his shining silver armor and with his bright sky wings unfurled. You can't do anything without me? He smiled at Yeon-woo. Yeon-woo's eyes widened. He wanted to shout at Jeong-woo to stop. It was too dangerous. He wanted to tell Jeong-woo not to go forward in his unstable state, but he couldn't speak. Let's go, Mern. Right now, that name seems to be a better fit than Nemesis. Kicking off from the ground, Jeong-woo flew towards Alforoni. Nemesis followed with his fangs bared. It was the return of Heaven Wing, the player who had shaken up the tower a long time ago. Chapter 396. Thunder, 3. Is there nothing I can do? Jeong-woo had asked himself over and over while he was still in the pocket watch. He felt guilty that he hadn't been any help to his brother at all, from the uprising in Tartarus and Hades' death to Mother Earth's pursuit and the escape to the stage. No matter how much he wanted to do something, he was just a soul without a physical body. Alforoni's appearance made him feel an even greater sense of powerlessness. It was the same emotion he'd felt when he closed his eyes a long time ago, the same emotion he'd felt over and over in the endless cycle of the special benefit, and the same emotion he never wanted to feel again. And yet here he was, overwhelmed by this wretched feeling once more. Even at this point, couldn't he help his brother? Just as Jeong-woo was berating himself, Alforoni's words echoed in his mind once more, even with your misaligned luck and short fate, you roamed around and around in the skies. I see you've cobbled together a likeness in the end? At that moment, Jeong-woo's eyes widened. Alforoni had accurately described his situation. At first, he was shocked that his suspicions hadn't been unfounded after all, but most of all, he was glad that he now had a solution. Let's do it. Jeong-woo quickly began to map out a plan in his head. Then, he asked his old friend for help. Mern. Fortunately, his friend nodded. Ex-master, I'll follow you anywhere you go. Thanks. You don't need to say that. Nemesis said with a light chuckle. Friends aren't supposed to thank each other? Jeong-woo grinned in gratitude. You're still as cringy and sentimental as ever, Let's hurry. As he watched Nemesis move, Jeong-woo managed to grasp his sword again. Cha Jeong-woo. He heard his brother calling him from behind, but his voice soon faded away with the distance. Jeong-woo couldn't help smiling. His brother was as much of a worrywart as ever. It wasn't like he was going off to die. I'm already dead, so how can I die again? Right, Mern. Nemesis had transformed into a mythical dragon with golden scales instead of black by now. Since he was an entity who lived in dreams and nothingness, he could easily change his appearance. At the moment, he had resumed his appearance as Mern as a kind of memorial. Both he and Jeong-woo felt as though they'd returned to the past. 15 years ago, when they clashed against the mighty enemy of the tower, they had only each other to rely on. They'd developed a special understanding that allowed them to read each other's thoughts with just a glance, and even now, things hadn't changed. Ex-master? What? How lame. Jeong-woo was speechless. Work harder? Jeong-woo looked at Nemesis with a flabbergasted expression and shook his head. He could hear Nemesis laugh. I'm sorry for involving you in this danger. He felt sincerely apologetic that Nemesis might be walking a path to his death once more. And just as before, this was all because of Jeong-woo. Don't be foolish. I'm doing it because I want to. Even though I call you brother's master, I have free will, and this is my choice? Nemesis brushed off Jeong-woo's apology with a solemn face. I waited a long time for you. Now that I've met you again and have the chance to stand next to you once more, it's the path that I wish to choose. Apologizing for that is just mocking me? Jeong-woo stared at Nemesis. Mern. Humph. You don't have you be moved? Can't you do something about that sentimentality? Nemesis couldn't reply. PFT. Ex-master? What? Can I bite off your head? Request rejected. I kinda have a lot I haven't done yet. He turned around with a smirk. Okay, anyway. Let's begin? As he nodded, Nemesis steadily melted into nothingness. Space opened and a void began to descend, spilling out like black ink. Dreaming illusion. The world around Jeong-woo slowly changed as the dreaming world and the real world began to overlap with each other. This was an ability derived from Brahm's research on illusory worlds, making it possible to affect reality to a certain degree. The slowed world returned to normal, and Jeong-woo felt the pressure of a gigantic hand on him. It was Alforoni's move to crush Yeon-woo and steal the throne of the underworld. Jeong-woo blocked him and swung Dragon Slayer in a large circle. The white blade exploded with a blinding light that split through space and cut Alforoni's hand. Boom! Heavenwing's signature skill spread across the sky, dispelling the auroras Alforoni was radiating. The lightning didn't stop there and continued to expand like a net, causing the fog that made up Alforoni's body to shake. Boom! Rumble! The aftershocks were so strong that it seemed the world itself would collapse. No one had ever managed to successfully challenge Alforoni before, and it was a stunning attack, the first one to ever block Alforoni and even retaliate. The 6th place high-ranker Heavenwing had returned to his former glory. Creak. Was this from his incomplete recovery? Jeong-woo tilted his head to the side and rotated his arm as he heard the sounds coming from inside his body. The soul power his body was composed of flickered for a brief moment before returning to normal. I wanted to use my sword again after such a long time. Why can't I control my power? Aren't you being too hard on yourself? It's fine, it's fine. I've been sleeping and resting for so long. I do have a conscience, and I have to earn my meals. I can't always live off of my brother like the neighborhood bum, right? Even though Jeong-woo spoke jokingly and smiled, his eyes were trained on Alforoni. Rumble. The wave of light continued to push away the auroras around Alforoni. Ashy fog returned to fill up the area that had been thrust back, but Jeong-woo had already managed to quickly glimpse a faint object beyond it, the core. It was the location of Alforoni's body. Now that he knew where it was, he couldn't waste any more time. Jeong-woo's sky wings unfurled more widely than ever, and he released the magic he'd memorized while still inside the pocket watch. Countless magic squares spread out from him, filling up the sky until there were no gaps left between the squares. The magical attack on Alforoni began. Pew! 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 The attack ripped through Alforoni's fog relentlessly. With each strike, the fog dissipated and then reappeared again, exploding into a lump of light. The laws of the stage moved along them as a new command was written in the in-laws: eliminate Cha Jeong-woo. The command was a powerful restriction on Shannon, Kon, and the others, who had no choice but to follow it. However, for Jeong-woo, who had been close to exoviation, it was only a small discomfort that wasn't enough to restrict him completely. Moreover, as Jeong-woo was a cherished successor to the ancient dragon Kalidas, he had some authority to interfere in the laws, as well. Even though it might not be enough to completely defeat Alforoni, he could push away any attempts to harm him, at least. Boom! And so, Jeong-woo managed to dart through the sky, and with every stroke of his sword, he split the fog and destroyed auroras. Tentacles reached out to him but were torn up by random shooting before fading away. Jeong-woo felt an odd sense of déjà vu. This is just like how it was back then. He remembered how desperately he'd fought to get through Red Dragon's net to the 77th floor. Now I feel disgusted thinking about it. His eyes sharp, Jeong-woo slashed with Dragon Slayer one more time. Boom! The ashy fog split apart, and Jeong-woo soon reached its center. Not bad? However, the core where there should have been a person was empty. He could only see a round barrier around a vacant space. The twisted space refracted and it seemed to briefly reveal a humanoid shape, but Jeong-woo couldn't catch anything with his draconic eyes. He'd entered an illusory world that had been created with Alforoni's mind power from the 77th floor. Alforoni could easily view any floor with his 1,000 Li eyes. Because he was so strong, he could not only make the stage shake with just a projection of his mind power, but also could create an illusory world where he could materialize physical laws. It was an unbelievable ability, considering how much difficulty Brahm had experienced creating an illusory world using all kinds of magic circles and alchemy. The voice was coming from the empty core. So, you managed to reach this place. Well, you were like this in the past, too. Regardless of the trial or obstacle you faced, you were able to overcome it. I liked you because you're so different from someone who is bound to destiny like me. Although Alforoni spoke in a bright voice, Jeong-woo's face was hard. He tilted his head to the left and grumbled, "Sheesh, can you stop talking like a geezer?" "A geezer? Makes sense. You're not wrong." Alforoni laughed cheerfully. The clear barrier shook, and he spoke again. "I doubt that you came here to try to convince me. Do you have a plan to stop me?" "I'm not sure, but I think I do." Jeong-woo felt like someone was looking him up and down. With your strength? The voice was curious but not condescending. Alforoni had annihilated the draconic species and was a wall that even the Martial King and the Summer Queen couldn't breach. No matter how much Jeong-woo manifested his power as Heaven Wing, there was no way he could defeat Alforoni. Your words gave me a clue? My words? Yes, you said that I'm a likeness. For a moment, Alforoni was silent, then his voice seemed to be filled with ruefulness. Do you understand what that means? Of course. Flutter. The particles of Jeong-woo's spiritual body began to scatter, each tiny piece turning into a letter. Then, the letters connected themselves into sentences that looked like strands of string. They were the words he'd written in the diary. The sentences turned into paragraphs and began to invade Alforoni's illusory world. The diary contained countless layers of vestiges from the endless special benefits, which made it powerful enough to threaten Alforoni's illusory world. Also, its existence contained a strong will, Jeong-woo's will. Of course, I know I'm made of vestiges. Shit. Yeon-woo cursed, clenching his teeth. Rumble. The sky trembled. The stage was still in tumult, which meant that after Jeong-woo had entered the fog, he must have continued battling Alforoni. Thoughts crowded Yeon-woo's mind. How would Jeong-woo deal with Alforoni with that body? Even if he had stockpiled a lot of soul power in the pocket watch, it would be used up quickly. Furthermore, Jeong-woo still needed to recuperate, and if he grew close to total depletion, Yeon-woo wouldn't be able to hide the secret anymore. What kind of expression would he make once he found out? Yeon-woo couldn't imagine how shocked he'd be. He needed to stop him. However, the channel was still blocked and didn't budge no matter how much he struggled. His regeneration skill was working with the power of the Philosopher's Stone, but he still hadn't recovered enough to move. Was there any other way? He tried to think of who might be able to help and rescue Jeong-woo, but no one came to mind. Would he really be defeated by Alforoni like this? Yeon-woo's mind was desperately searching for an answer when the cast of the Black King trembled, as if laughing at Yeon-woo's idiocy. Fool! A voice said in his mind. It was the demonism. I thought you were finally growing a little more useful now, but is this all you amount to? You're still lacking. You have the vessel, why is this all you can do? A mocking laugh floated out. Oh well. I'll show you how to use strength. At that moment, with the feeling of a vast darkness rolled up to his neck, cutting Yeon-woo's consciousness off. Ki. There was a faint sound of laughter. Chapter 397. Thunder, 3. I wasn't there. But we were. Yeon-woo felt his consciousness fade away with the demonism's laughter. It wasn't that it had disappeared, but rather, it felt as though he were immersed in something, like being neck-deep in pitch-black seawater. No matter how much he instinctively struggled, it seemed like he might drown at any time. However, after a while, he found himself swimming as comfortably as though he were in a familiar pool. When he managed to pull himself together, he realized that the vast ocean was all his consciousness. He felt an ease and sense of infiniteness that he couldn't put his finger on. Limitless power surged from his body, as the purple energy created by the harmonization of the Dragon Heart and Philosopher's Stone finally raged around properly for the first time in a long while. Swoosh! Black energy stirred around him, and purple residue flowed down his body. Wine swirled around the expansive stage, so strong that anyone who didn't use magic power would be uprooted. For some time, Alforoni's pressure, which had filled the stage, vanished. Yeon-woo stood tall, emanating a ferocious aura as his sky wings glowed purple and unfurled as though they would reach the sky. It seemed almost unreal that his body had been devastated with fatigue just a few moments ago. He had a sensation that was different from anything he'd ever felt. The feeling of the power of the throne after manifesting the gods and demons of death couldn't even compare. The power of the throne dealt with death, but now he felt as though he were controlling something even beyond that. It seemed like an abyss that stretched out for eternity. He wanted to run free and destroy everything with this uncontainable power. Keek. Yeon-woo was in such a good mood that he began laughing shrilly without even realizing it. His eyes widened. Has my laughter always sounded like this? Keek. The outside air is, yes. Good. Very good. He didn't even notice that he was muttering to himself, a proud smile on his face. He exhaled deeply, delighting in the fresh air. His body felt cramped as though he'd been asleep for a long time, but it didn't matter. It was wonderful to stretch. Although the stage was filled with Alforoni's presence, it was the happiest place he'd been. It seemed like his vessel was doing better than he thought. Keek. It was only when he burst out into laughter once more that Yeon-woo realized that he was Cha Yeon-woo and not Cha Yeon-woo at the same time. His consciousness was still that of Cha Yeon-woo, but everything else, actions, habits, instincts, and subconscious, was now the demonism. However, on closer inspection, even his consciousness had been infiltrated by the demonism. The delight he felt in the fresh air and the impulse to destroy didn't belong to him. However, who cares? The entity that was Yeon-woo and not Yeon-woo grinned and stretched his neck to the left. His baleful eyes glowed purple behind the demonic-looking mask that seemed to have grown even more monstrous. It doesn't matter if I can get rid of that damned bastard. Muttering to himself, Yeon-woo curved his fingers into claws and slashed horizontally. The space that his fingers raked through cracked like glass, breaking apart and sending 5 different shockwaves shooting up the sky. Boom! With an explosive sound, the fog and auroras in the sky were torn apart to reveal the invisible barrier around Jeong-woo and Alforoni. Found you, damned bastard! Yeon-woo laughed coldly at Alforoni's barrier. He looked past Jeong-woo, spread his purple wings, and rushed to the sky, leaving behind an extraordinary sonic boom that made the ground quake. The stage was in chaos once more. It hadn't been that long since Jeong-woo first realized that he wasn't entirely real. His body had faded a few times, but he assumed that it was because his soul had deteriorated so much from repeating the special benefit in the soul stone. You'll get better soon. I haven't said anything at all. If someone could hear us, they would think I was dying of worry. I know I'll be fine without you having to tell me, geez. Although Yeon-woo had appeared calm, inside, he'd been anxious that Jeong-woo might disappear. And yet, he'd still tried to comfort Jeong-woo. Even though Jeong-woo grumbled and sulked, he still felt comforted. Also, his body would begin to solidify again whenever he rested, just as his brother said, so he truly believed that he'd be able to recover as well. After he stabilized, he thought it might be possible to create a temporary body like Brahm's homunculus. And then I'll be able to climb the floors with my brother. We could even aim past the 77th floor. He didn't even think about taking revenge. His brother always finished what he set out to do, and he was sure he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes if given the chance. He only wanted to cut off all the things that tied him down and climb the floors to the noisy heavenly world beyond Alforoni together with his brother, new lover, and daughter he'd never known about. He thought they could even go past the heavenly world to the 99th floor and get to the very top, the 100th floor. He already knew the wish he would make, please make everyone happy. It was a small wish, but it was the most important one to him. However, he wasn't really Jeong-woo. Now, all those things are impossible. He was only a likeness, as Alforoni said. He was a combination of different vestiges which rose from an amalgamation of the letters and data from his continuous special benefit. There had been so much data that it had taken on a divine nature and assumed Jeong-woo's form to create its shape. He was the diary itself. Jeong-woo had already suspected this before his battle with Ether. The letters he glimpsed around his scattering spirit body were definitely from the diary. The same letters that caused him pain and bound him in the soul stone were actually inside his body, they were the very components he was made of, just like flesh and blood. His brother had probably already known about this for a while. In hindsight, Yeon-woo's words and expressions had betrayed his knowledge. As Yeon-woo had worried about him, he'd also been filled with anxiety that Jeong-woo would find out the truth one day and be sent reeling into shock and despair. Yeon-woo had clearly put in a lot of effort not to show his worries. But that was pretty strange too. What a bad liar. Jeong-woo grinned as he thought of how obvious his brother had been. He'd heard that Yeon-woo had managed to con a lot of people, and he couldn't imagine how he'd managed to pull that off. However, the biggest mystery was where the real Jeong-woo was. It was also the only part that had been cut off from his special benefit, too. Since the ancient dragon Kalidas was still alive and he couldn't remember anything that happened after he made the diary, he had to assume this issue was related somehow. Poor Yeon-woo, in the end, he's back at square one. Jeong-woo remembered Yeon-woo's joy in finding his lost brother. How devastated he must have been when he discovered the truth. And yet, he'd tried to comfort his brother's vestige instead. There was no one more pitiful, and Jeong-woo wanted to help him somehow. He might blubber on and won, but he still wanted to help his bad-tempered but good-hearted brother in the end. At least it was a relief that he wouldn't have to see a grown man cry. Jeong-woo unleashed the letters that made up his body. The sentences and paragraphs became chains that spread across the illusory world and tied Al-Foroni up. You know nothing will change even if you do this, correct? Al-Foroni said from the center of the illusory world as he watched the letters appear. Jeong-woo was trying to infect the illusory world with data from his diary. Since illusory worlds were made up of the thoughts of their creators, they would be destroyed if they were infected with data from someone else. Although it was impossible for an ordinary being to create an illusory world, if they did, they would be severely damaged if their illusory world were taken away. However, for someone like Al-Foroni, who could use thousand eyes, an illusory world could be easily discarded and a new one made. This meant that even if Jeong-woo sacrificed himself to block the illusory world, Al-Foroni could whip up a new one and stop Yeon-woo again. However, Jeon-woo was already aware of this. I know. He had once been a player who tried to surpass Al-Foroni like the Martial King, the Summer Queen, and the other 9 kings. Of course he knew everything that could be learned about Al-Foroni, and in the end, he'd come to one conclusion: Al-Foroni was untouchable. But I can buy some time at least, right? Buy some time? Even someone like you can't make a new illusory world that quickly? Al-Foroni laughed in disbelief. Is that all? What if I use Shikuki? All I would have to do is manifest myself? But Jeong-woo's eyes were still tranquil. I know that you're in no state to do that. Al-Foroni didn't respond. Those who need to know are already aware that the opposition of the progenitor gods and creator gods has become stronger recently. Your hands have been tied for the first time? Al-Foroni remained silent. So, I'll at least be able to buy some time for my brother to escape? And if I chase after him? I know you will, but I believe that my brother will find a solution before you catch up to him. He'll find a way to evade both you and the system. He just needs some time right now because he's tired. Jeong-woo's smile deepened. He has quite a lot of tricks up his sleeve. That bad temper didn't come from nowhere? Humph. Al-Foroni was silent. If this was Jeong-woo's plan, then it was true that Al-Foroni would be in a difficult position. There was nothing more troublesome than dealing with people unafraid to sacrifice themselves. Even though Jeong-woo was a vestige, he had self-awareness. He was probably scared of dying, but he didn't hesitate to throw forward to save his brother. Al-Foroni couldn't personally appear on the 35th floor, but that didn't mean he could just let them be. As he'd said, there could be no exceptions. Oh well. I like you and respect you, but I can't just let you alone? Jeong-woo tensed. Things were getting serious, and even if he fought to his fullest against Al-Foroni's mind power alone, it would be hard. The only thing he was hoping for was that he would have an impact on Al-Foroni, no matter how small. That would give Yeon-woo enough time to escape. Use that time to run away. Please. Jeong-woo clutched Dragon Slayer tightly. His sky wings unfurled as he dashed into the illusory world, the letters in his wake increasing in number. Just as he and Alforoni were about to clash, the ashy fog and auroras trembled. Then, they were ripped away. Boom! Hey! Since they were in a world that Alforoni had created, it was impossible to impact it. Alforoni seemed surprised too, and turned towards the direction of the shockwave. Jeong-woo stopped flying and turned around, hoping it wasn't what he thought it was. His face stiffened as he saw Yeon-woo, or an entity like Yeon-woo, standing there with a vicious aura and radiating an ominous purple energy. "Hyung, how'd you?" Jeong-woo was about to shout at him to return, but the entity that looked like Yeon-woo growled and cut him off. "Who says you're not real, you idiot?" "What? You're my brother. No matter what bullshit anyone says, you're my brother, and that fact doesn't change." Jeong-woo's eyes shook. Yeon-woo's eyes flashed with a purple light that looked insane. "Stop with that bullshit and come back. Now." Yeon-woo spread his right hand and made a grasping motion, as if he had no intention of listening to what Jeong-woo had to say. A vortex appeared in the air, sucking in Jeong-woo's body. It happened so fast that he didn't even have a chance to avoid it. At the same time, Yeon-woo glowered at Alforoni's gaze beyond the illusory world. He unfurled his wings to leave the ashy fog with Jeong-woo. Alforoni quickly projected his mind power to catch the brothers, and the ashy fog gathered to chase after Yeon-woo. It was his opportunity to take care of the irregulars once and for all. "Faust! Block him!" "Yes, sir." However, on Yeon-woo's orders, space split between them, and two inferno sights, blazing more majestically than ever, appeared. Yeon-woo's unification with the demonism had temporarily restored Boo's memories and abilities from his past life, and now he stretched his hand out towards his old enemy. Boom! The explosion blew away Alforoni's fog. Yeon-woo's attacks didn't end there. The cast of the Black King suddenly trembled from the activation of a power. "Summoning of the dead has activated. Who will you summon?" "Summer Queen." At that moment, the sky opened up. Chapter 398. Thunder, 4. "Hyung, what?" As he fell from the sky into his brother's arms, Jeong-woo couldn't keep his wits together. He had no idea what was going on. How could the dog-tired guy in a desperate condition pierce through the illusory world with his strength? Why was he calling out Faust, the legendary great mage who had stood against Alforoni a long time ago? Why had the body of the Summer Queen, who had died so miserably, appeared? The sky that he'd just departed was now filled by a dragon who was dozens of meters in size. Although it was a bone dragon stained with demonic energy, it emanated dragon fear like a living dragon, as though it were the only thing that could exist in the world. The dragon roared, flapping its skeletal wings and making the atmosphere shake. Jeong-woo had observed Yeon-woo's subspace multiple times, so he'd seen the bone dragon before. However, the dragon in the sky was vastly different. It was stronger and fiercer, and the energy of its dragon fear was strangely familiar. "No way!" Jeong-woo's eyes widened. "Ismenios." Just then, the bone dragon's thoughts were delivered to Yeon-woo and Jeong-woo. "This is the only time I will help you, since that guy is someone I want to get rid of." The sunken eye sockets of the bone dragon simmered with purple light, displaying her deep rage towards Alforoni. It was a fury that was directed towards a being that had hunted down her species and stood unsurpassed through the thousands of years of her existence. With her power, she absorbed the stage as her domain, and the laws floated around as different magic attacks poured down on Alforoni. Each magic attack had outstanding force, exploding with intense heat and firepower. It was a strength that matched the one she'd demonstrated at her peak when she was still alive. The purple light near her uvula appeared to have the soulstone's energy, and it glowed instead of her dragon heart. "It really is her." Jeong-woo stared at the bone dragon in disbelief. He never imagined that the arrogant being who ruled at the top of the tower her entire life would appear in that state. The bone dragon had been created out of her own corpse, and yet not only had she descended, she'd even responded to the call of her killer. From what Jeong-woo knew of her, she would rather have a glorious death over such dishonor. Also, she had particularly detested him when he was still alive, even though they had once been close, and he tried to untie the knot in her heart. Despite that, he still couldn't understand why she was helping him. The bone dragon turned to Jeong-woo. Had she felt Jeong-woo's curious gaze? Back then, why did you? Her thoughts faded away, and the bone dragon stared at Jeong-woo for a while. All kinds of emotions flashed on her face, but she didn't say anything. Then, she turned her large head to Alforoni and flew up in the sky. The bone dragon immediately arrived before Alforoni in an instant. Thick magic power gathered in her mouth, and breath gushed out. Boom! Rumble! Countless explosions blasted within Alforoni's fog, and Faust's inferno sights pushed the darkness as they began to creep up on Alforoni. Tap! Jeong-woo looked blankly at the scene, only regaining his senses as he landed on the ground. He looked at the entity who looked like Yeon-woo. In Jeong-woo's eyes, he was still his brother. Jeong-woo knew Yeon-woo had merged with something powerful, but his brother still felt the same about him. Jeong-woo only felt terribly sorry. His brother had been so desperate to find him, but even after his long search, he'd only found a copy. Jeong-woo was about to say something when Yeon-woo suddenly struck the back of his head. Smack! Jeong-woo's voice rose despite himself. The hell? What are you doing? If you do something useless like this one more time, I'm really going to beat you up. But I'm not. Smack! Damn it! That hurts? I'm hitting you, that's why it hurts. The F? Smack! Stop! Jeong-woo wrapped his hands around his head at the pain. He didn't know what Yeon-woo had eaten to become this strong, but his head felt like it was about to fall off. Yeon-woo's eyes looked impassive. Does it hurt? No, duh. Why are you saying you're not real? What? Yeon-woo's words were so completely unexpected that Jeong-woo's eyes widened. Yeon-woo said in a low voice, you speak the same way, think the same way, and hurt the same way. You share memories with me and regret the past, too. So let me ask this. Jeong-woo thought Yeon-woo's glowing purple eyes looked sadder than usual. Are you real? What, you wanna discuss all that philosophy we learned in high school again? Existentialism, that stuff? Call it whatever you want. But keep this in mind. Yeon-woo stretched his hand out towards Jeong-woo's head. Jeong-woo instinctively flinched, but his brother only patted his head gently. You're my brother, no matter what anyone says. You're my nice but stupid brother who worked harder than anyone else to save our mother, looked for me desperately, and waited for me. Jeong-woo couldn't speak. So don't think of going anywhere. Yeon-woo walked past Jeong-woo. He was going to join the battle with the Summer Queen and Boo/Faust. Jeong-woo stood still for a while, not looking at Yeon-woo. Who's he calling stupid? Tears dripped from his face as he grumbled. Why is he acting all high and mighty? His shoulders dropped as his head bowed. Fuck! He hugged his fading body, which continued leaking letters. Spark! His body was falling apart. Plod! Plod! The thing that looked like Yeon-woo walked slowly. His eyes were fixed on Boo/Faust, the Summer Queen, and Alforoni in the sky. Rumble! Crash! Boom! The battle was so extreme that it seemed as though the stage would be crushed. The bone dragon's scarlet breath of the bone dragon turned the sky red, and heat waves shimmered in the air. The ground turned into a barren wasteland that couldn't even support a single second of life. Boo/Faust gathered fire in his right hand. The hell fire that he preferred to use when he was alive uncurled and columns of fire shot up from the ground, reaching dozens of meters in the air. Clumps of fire fell like rain due to meteor striker. His left hand, which ruled death, pointed at the ground, releasing the thousands of souls in Yeon-woo's soul collection. They began eating away at the fog. Those who gorged themselves too much either exploded or else merged with other souls to grow in size. Flames danced on the ground, souls wandered, and darkness fell from the sky. It was a horrifying sight that seemed to be straight out of the hell in legends. Alforoni tried to stop them with the power that could force the laws of the stage to change, but their resistance only grew fiercer. The High Guardians looked on, far from the battlefield, and sighed. They had already suffered during the incidents of the 23rd floor. This was like déjà vu for them. Furthermore, many players had gotten caught up in the damage to the stage and were in danger. Their list of problems went on and on. But the source of the problems, the entity that looked like Yeon-woo, acted as though it weren't a big deal at all. Pieces of the Ruyi Bang slowly floated out and danced around him with every step he took. Flash! Sparks flew between the pieces and Yeon-woo. The sparks grew as more pieces appeared and the more violently they danced. It was clear that the Ruyi Bang pieces were rejecting Yeon-woo. Something in Yeon-woo repelled the divine iron of the Ruyi Bang. However, the entity similar to Yeon-woo continued to pull the pieces into darkness, knowing full well that he risked being sealed in the Ruyi Bang. His skin tingled in an annoying manner, but his eyes remained locked on Alforoni. The residual ego's nagging wish was to escape. Since it wasn't something as difficult like resurrection or rescue, the entity didn't mind granting it. He left the main ego the task of seeing it through against a single opponent, Alforoni. As he stayed inside Yeon-woo, he had loathed even just the sound of the name. He wanted to see if Alforoni still lived up to his past abilities. Although there are limits to this body, the corner of Yeon-woo's lips rose, "It'll be fun since I have the throne." Kiki. With his strange laugh, the entity that looked like Yeon-woo extended his hand towards Alforoni. Clink! The chains on Yeon-woo's right arm, the despair of the Black King, made a sound. Clatter! The chains began to unwind like bandages. It was the first release of the divine iron, and the Ruyi Bang pieces harmonized with the chains. Extend, Ruyi! At the command, the Ruyi Bang pieces glowed with light and began to connect to the long chains. Clank! Clank! The chains grew longer until one end was sucked into a different dimension. 6 points of nothingness burst open in the fog between the Bone Dragon and Boo/Faust, and the chains popped out of each one. Clatter! The chains moved quickly to dig into the fog. The illusory world was already damaged by Jeong-woo's letters, and the attack of the Bone Dragon and Boo/Faust weakened it to the point of cracking. Since divine iron could invalidate all laws, the illusory world shattered. Crash! However, the chains only dug in deeper, reaching to the core and clattering as they wrapped around something in the empty space. Gotcha, you rat! Yeon-woo smiled like a fisherman who had caught a big haul. He pulled the chains in his right hand. The chain suddenly tensed in mid-air, as though they would snap. Then, it was quickly sucked into the nothingness to force itself on Alforoni's mind power. Alforoni tried to resist, but accompanied by the sound of tearing space, his mind power was flicked out of the illusory world. The ashy fog and auroras cleaved across the sky without a core to stabilize them. As powerful shockwaves pulsed out, Alforoni's fallen mind power slowly took on a human form and landed on the ground. Because of his long hair, which fell past the hips, it was hard to tell what Alforoni's appearance or gender was. However, his appearance befitted someone who wasn't known to many. A heavy fog floated up from below to cover Alforoni's body. The Bone Dragon spewed out a condensed breath with incomparable power, planning to blow Alforoni away. A fiery tornado crushed Alforoni's mind power. Chapter 399. Thunder, 5. Boom. There was no other way to describe the situation other than that the world itself was melting. The earth sank deeper and deeper, and even the hard bedrock liquefied from the heat. Flames flared at the edges of funnel-shaped craters with diameters dozens of kilometers long. Magma overflowed, melting rock as it passed. The cracked ground looked like a turtle shell, and white steam floated over it. Boom! But the destruction didn't stop there. The breath's power shook the fault lines underneath the ground, and the resulting earthquakes were of such high magnitude that the ground seemed to rise and fall in waves. Alforoni's mind was pushed far away. The intertwined chains around one of his arms made it impossible for him to escape, and the breath hit him directly. His condition was clear through the remnants of fog. Just when it appeared as if the fog would be completely blown away, space suddenly opened behind Alforoni. Faust's eyes appeared. Death? Faust stretched out his hand through the emptiness. His skeletal hand touched Alforoni's back gently, but its effect wasn't gentle at all. Boom! Boom! An invisible strength pounded at Alforoni as though he were a large bell. It was a debuff attack that gathered the common, ordinary souls and shot them out. They not only attacked the opponent physically but also forced a curse on him. Naturally, the greater the number of souls being used, the more powerful the curse. As the soulish grace intensified, Alforoni's trembling also grew more violent. The fog scattered as though it were about to vanish completely, and the curse relentlessly assimilated with Alforoni's mind, putting him in an increasingly critical situation. Swish! Meanwhile, the chains tightened even more and prevented Alforoni's mind from moving. Since they were made of divine iron, they not only bound through physical means but also bound spiritual beings and objects as well. Of course, Alforoni was just as fearful of the same iron that frightened gods and demons. Also, since Alforoni had only sent his mind, no matter how much he used his magic power to cut through the chains only dug deeper and ravenously gobbled up his magic power. He attempted to use Shakuka to escape, but his attempt failed, as well. Is not being able to use magic power always so uncomfortable? Alforoni's mind laughed bitterly in frustration. He'd failed the player's skills by interfering in the system, and now his magic power was restricted. Even the skills and powers he was so proud of were failing. Finally, most of the fog was gone, and Faust took the opportunity to push his hand further. Kai-a-a-a-a-a. Thousands of souls were blown into a great blade that created a fissure in the air, rushing to chop Alforoni's mind, which loomed over it. Alforoni only felt one emotion towards Faust, fury. Oh dear! He sighed, thinking he would really be defeated at this rate. All he had wanted to do was to retrieve the inappropriate throne from the lower world and return after taking care of the irregularities. Things had become more complicated than he expected with the blooming of darkness, and the resurrection of those that he'd killed. The Summer Queen and Faust had once caused him trouble, so if they fought against him with the darkness on their side, it wouldn't be easy. I suppose I'll have to play along for a bit. His defense of the 77th floor would grow weaker, but he would become that much weaker, but he steeled himself, thinking that would be better than darkness causing chaos in the lower world. Suddenly, two eyes flashed through the dark fog. Alforoni released his level. Boom! A fierce wind rose, created by Alforoni's mind. It stretched in all directions, stirring the air so powerfully that the powerful breath that nearly annihilated the stage was pushed back. The space around it was destroyed. Faust, who was hiding in the other space, was blown away too. However, he could recover endlessly as long as he had a life vessel, so he immediately reappeared high up in the sky. When he looked down, he saw that there was nothing left of the destroyed stage. Alforoni's mind stood there with a grimace of annoyance. The ashy fog turned paler and flared up violently. Then, the white fog flowed into its core and took the form of something that looked human. Although he didn't reveal his appearance, it was a big shift from how he'd originally hidden himself in the fog. Strangely, his gaze could be read since he was likely using the thousand Li eyes, which could see anything. The ashy fog grew clearer and turned into an intense light, as though it were the only star shining in a dark, red sky, veiled by a celestial gas. However, on further thought, it seemed more like a sun, the only source of light in a galaxy of darkness. Alter ego? Faust clucked his tongue. The newly awakened alter ego was exuding a solid presence compared to the mind that it replaced. If anyone could hear his thoughts, they would have thought him insane. Alforoni's mind alone could crush the stage, but to Boo/Faust, the only thing that seemed to matter to him was that the alter ego, which was superior in power to Alforoni's mind, was simply solid. In fact, the Summer Queen and Boo/Faust truly felt this way. They were among the few who had challenged Alforoni throughout the long history of the tower. And so far, Alforoni hadn't shown anything that could be compared to the power they'd experienced while fighting him. Boo/Faust had been provoking Alforoni to force him to demonstrate his full power, and he had finally gotten his wish. However, Alforoni's strength was truly savage, and Boo/Faust felt as though old memories buried in his subconscious were being unearthed again. If a mere alter ego could emanate so much strength, what would it be like if his true body descended? Boo/Faust narrowed his eyes. Their plan wasn't just to pull down Alforoni's alter ego, but to draw out his true body from the 77th floor. The darkness hadn't properly bloomed because the vessel wasn't complete yet, but the Summer Queen and Faust wanted to fulfill their life's mission since they were already working together anyway. Boo/Faust didn't even want to think of his first death. Just when he'd reached his goal of darkness, Alforoni had suddenly interfered. Boo/Faust was determined to make him pay the price for ruining his research, even though hundreds of years had already passed. Fool! Do you think that's the end? The bone dragon suddenly smirked. Clatter! Boo/Faust's head turned into her direction, eyes filled with dissatisfaction. They were working together because of a common enemy, but they definitely hadn't been friendly with each other when they were still alive. In fact, they were closer to being enemies. Faust had displayed his madness when he'd made contracts with gods from other worlds just for his research, and the Summer Queen had ruled over the tower for thousands of years as the leader of Red Dragon. They had fought every chance they got, reducing the battlegrounds to ashes each time and making players run away in panic as soon as the two were in the same place. Their enmity got so bad that even the arrogant Red Dragon avoided Faust as much as possible. They each didn't have a good impression of the other, and if not for the great roof of darkness over them, it would have been impossible for them to work together like this. There was a reason why the Summer Queen was on the darkness's side. Although her grudge against Alforoni was part of it, she also had many things she wanted to ask Yeon-woo Cha Jeong-woo. What? Look over there, you stupid idiot! Can't you get a grip on yourself even after being resurrected? Boo/Faust didn't like the bone dragon's tone, but he knew she never spoke nonsense, and so he turned to look. His eyes widened immediately. The aura around Alforoni continued to grow stronger, making the stage quake. It didn't seem like he would stop after releasing his level. Is it possible? Yes, you fool. That's no alter ego? The bone dragon growled. It's his real body? Roar! The bone dragon spewed her breath at Alforoni once more. The blaze was powerful enough to make the atmosphere sizzle, but Alforoni easily pushed it aside with a wave of his hand. Then, he took a step forward and his body suddenly vanished, only to reappear in front of her. It's been a while, Ismenios? Alforoni pulled his fist back and swung it at the bone dragon. I don't feel very pleased that a dragon who should follow natural order has come back like this. A shockwave rippled through the atmosphere. The bone dragon quickly unfurled her wings and used blink to avoid it, but the wave followed her and struck her. Although it was only a single blow, it destroyed half of her body right away. The darkness covered her and quickly restored her body, but the bone dragon's eyes narrowed, displeased. Damn you! Swoosh! Once again, her breath rushed out. Alforoni waved his hand again and pushed the breath away, and with Shikuki, he appeared behind Boo/Faust. As though he were expecting Alforoni's movements, Boo/Faust instantly vanished, leaving behind various magic squares that shot out hellfire and curses at Alforoni. However, these attacks only vanished like melting snow against the light that Alforoni emitted. The backlash turned the attacks into a curse of light and sent it back to Boo/Faust. Since Boo/Faust had lived through death, he was vulnerable to Alforoni's holy power, and he was paralyzed, his hand beginning to scatter even though it was wrapped in darkness. The souls circled around him protectively, only to be purified. They disappeared instantly, and hellfire and other magic were annulled. Thinking he'd be in danger if this kept up, Boo/Faust attempted to leave the battlefield to deal with the holy power eating away at his soul. Using Blink, he tried to hide in a cave, but Alforoni followed at his heels with Shikuki, as though he refused to let Boo/Faust go. To Alforoni, Boo/Faust were like cows to be butchered, creatures that had to be killed after coming back against the natural order of things. Alforoni's pursuit of Boo/Faust made the space of the stage crack like glass, the fractures spreading like spider webs and demolishing the laws around them. The Bone Dragon established laws to help Boo/Faust and spewed her breath, but each time, the laws were restored and her breath was left in the emptiness. They had successfully pulled Alforoni's true body from the 77th floor, but his power was overwhelming them. Boom! Boo/Faust was blown away in the broken space from Alforoni's powerful punch. Alforoni quickly chased after him to finish him off and sliced his hand down. Just as the light was about to split Boo/Faust, something pulled the chains wrapped around Alforoni. Oh dear! Alforoni was sucked into emptiness. By the time he collected himself, something that looked like Yeon-woo gripped his collar and growled, "You impudent fool! Who are you trying to touch?" Chapter 400 Thunder, 6. Alforoni yanked Yeon-woo's hand from his collar with so much force that he nearly ripped off Yeon-woo's right arm. At the same time, he turned and lashed out with his other hand, which radiated a brilliant light like the sun splitting through darkness. Flash! Alforoni's light contained an incredible amount of holy power that could chase ghosts and evil spirits away. The darkness of the creature that seemed like Yeon-woo was composed of death and chaos, which meant that it was at odds with Alforoni's light. Since it had the power to illuminate the entire world in the blink of an eye, it meant that it could easily incinerate the creature that seemed like Yeon-woo. It was why Yeon-woo didn't dare face it directly. Boom! He projected darkness to the ground. The earth moved according to his will, sending up dirt to create a wall separating him from Alforoni. From far away, it looked as though a mountain were moving. Alforoni's light was blocked by the wall and turned into a tornado. Yeon-woo backed away. Although a wall had risen between him and Alforoni, it only managed to partially block the light, and half of Yeon-woo's body had been blown off. He quickly recovered, the darkness flowing out of the cast of the Black King and quickly restoring his body. Just then, the space behind the retreating Yeon-woo opened and Alforoni appeared. "Where do you think you're going?" He had activated his signature skill, Shikuki, which allowed him to use the veins along the ground to reach any spot he wanted. He reached out to Yeon-woo, and there was another explosion of light. Yeon-woo flapped his wings and came to a quick stop. He turned with his left hand extended. Darkness shot out like a blade and penetrated the light. Boom! Boom! Rumble! Shockwaves rippled out one after the other as the darkness clashed with the light. The light tried to swallow up the darkness, while the darkness tried to extinguish the light. The creature that seemed like Yeon-woo didn't even seem to notice any injuries as he threw himself forward. Regeneration. The regeneration skill he learned to catch up to Alforoni combined with the darkness, granting him an ability to recover that was close to his immortal skill. Even as the light tore his body to shreds, the darkness splashed like ink to heal him. Soon, Yeon-woo had reached Alforoni, and he stretched his hand out once more. The grid tore out of subspace into his hand, and he swung it with the power of the 8 extreme swords. Crash! The 8 trigrams from Chien to Sun activated in order, with Heaven Bracket amplifying its strength to completely sever Alforoni's arms and legs. He attempted to set a curtain of light around himself, but Vigrid just cut through it, digging in even deeper. However, Alforoni wasn't about to take the attacks lying down. His immortal meant that no matter how critically he was injured, he would recover. Thousand Li eyes gave him the ability to penetrate through his surroundings, and he could grasp Yeon-woo's movements right away. To Alforoni, a body was nothing more than a disposable item that could easily be replaced. Thwack! Alforoni was decapitated, but his headless body continued to move closer to Yeon-woo. Boom! His body used Shikuka to appear behind Yeon-woo, this time fully recovered. He brought his hand down on Yeon-woo. Thwack! Ugh! Yeon-woo's neck was almost sliced through. The light divided the darkness, creeping in like poison to stop his regeneration skill from working. The creature that seemed like Yeon-woo gritted his teeth and twisted to the side, brandishing the grit at Alforoni. Alforoni sacrificed his left arm and used Shikuka to appear in Yeon-woo's blind spot. Just as his open hand was about to reach Yeon-woo's chest, the chains around his arm suddenly tightened and pulled him back. Clatter! It didn't matter how many times his limbs were sundered, the chains were tied to his soul, so it wasn't easy to escape them. Emptiness opened, and Alforoni found himself in front of Yeon-woo, whose face was twisted savagely. You rat! Yeon-woo stabbed Vigrid into Alforoni's neck, but Alforoni used Shikuka to appear behind Yeon-woo again. He aimed for Yeon-woo's waist, and Yeon-woo was forced to twist his body in the opposite direction. However, he managed to pull Alforoni closer to him with the chains. Boom! 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 Space opened, closed, twisted, and broke. The creature that seemed like Yeon-woo and Alforoni played their game of tag obsessively. Darkness and light confronted each other, scorching the stage over and over. As if reminding everyone of her presence, the bone dragon stretched her head back and spewed breath. Death, to a deathless one. Faust drew hundreds of magic squares in the sky and rained down attacks. Meteors of hellfire fell to the ground. Boom! The players watched as the two beings, who were close to superior-level deities and had legendary accomplishments, battled in the sky. The fuck? Is that possible? They were left speechless. May the blessing of the heavens be with, Kreutz was praying on one knee, shocked as his assumptions and views of the world were crushed. With Zulfikar stuck in the ground and a large barrier stretching around him, he prayed again and again for fortune to bless Yeon-woo. Jeong-woo watched with a nonplussed expression, his eyes never straying from the battlefield. More often than not, they were fixed on the creature that seemed like Yeon-woo. As soon as he was rescued, Jeong-woo knew that this Yeon-woo was not the Yeon-woo he knew. It was like he had been possessed by something. Jeong-woo was familiar with the appearances of possessed players. It was a symptom of divine sickness, which frequently struck apostles. Constant contact with great beings often made the soul grow muddled, and in the end, they would be swallowed up by the god they served. Most apostles lived with this risk in exchange for power, and even Vieradoon had suffered it multiple times, growing nearly delusional with fear because of it. It was happening to Yeon-woo, but as far as Jeong-woo knew, Yeon-woo didn't serve anyone. Still, he was definitely possessed by a divine being and not a minor one. It was something large, something on the same level as Mother Earth. However, he had no idea who or what it was, despite having repeated the special benefit countless times. It was surely an extraordinary being if it could bring back two dead players and even go toe-to-toe with someone like Alforoni, whom most divine beings couldn't defeat. Yeon-woo was in a perilous situation, but even then, he was worried about Jeong-woo. Jeong-woo's heart felt like it was being ripped apart, and he could only feel sorry for his brother, who was trying to protect him even though he wasn't the real Jeong-woo. PSSSSS. On top of that, his body was finding it difficult to maintain its form. Letters leaked out as his spirit scattered. His body was so frail that it might break with just a touch. The only reason he could resist was his anxiety over his brother and his longing to stay. Mr. Cha Jeong-woo. Jeong-woo's thoughts were interrupted when someone called his name. He turned his head and swallowed. Ivilka? Ohio, Ohio. Ohio here. It's a completely different experience meeting you like this. It truly is nice to see you. It's been so long. Ah, it hasn't been that long for you though, I presume. Ivilka adjusted his monocle and burst out laughing. He knew the exact details of the special benefit. Why is the system's chief administrator? SHH. Ivilka raised a finger to his lips before Jeong-woo could finish. His ferocious goblin eyes curved in a smile. That's a secret between the two of us. Jeong-woo didn't reply. Ohio. I like that you've always understand what I'm saying. Listen, let me give you a gift. Jeong-woo's eyes narrowed. The Ivilka he knew wasn't the kind of person who would give something for nothing. As if he knew what Jeong-woo was thinking, Ivilka grinned and clapped gently. Suddenly, white steam burst out of Jeong-woo's body. The stream of letters slowed, and his fading body grew clearer. This is... The person over there requested that you be fixed, no matter the cost. What? Jeong-woo's eyes widened. At first, he didn't know what Ivilka meant, but he soon realized that Yeon-woo was investing his exceptional amount of karma in him. Jeong-woo clenched his teeth. It was necessary to have karma as one climbed the tower. The more you had, the greater the rewards you received. At times, you could even boost your abilities dramatically. Even though Yeon-woo's level was advanced, considering how many floors he had yet to climb, he still needed karma. In fact, he needed more karma precisely because he was so skilled. The price to climb higher was greater. Yeon-woo shouldn't be using up his karma on Jeong-woo, but he had given it all up so that Jeong-woo could stay alive for a little while longer. You're my brother. No matter what bullshit anyone says, you're my brother, and that fact doesn't change. Jeong-woo clenched his fists tightly. His brother was a fool. This wouldn't accomplish more than simply slowing the speed of his body's disintegration. Complete restoration was impossible, and they were only delaying the inevitable. He forced down his emotions and turned to Ivilka. Ivilka, I have something to ask. Guardians cannot interfere or participate in players' businesses, but, in consideration of our long friendship, I'll answer any reasonable questions you may have. And there's still a lot of karma left as well. Jeong-woo knew Ivilka was only replying out of his own amusement, but he pretended not to know. Ohio. Well, what do you want to know? Looking into Ivilka's eyes, Jeong-woo asked, then, where's the real Cha Jeong-woo? Ivilka's gaze dropped slightly. Doesn't exist. Anywhere.